Hello, sleepy soul. The night is quiet, the world is asleep, and something is waiting in the dark. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel and write your country and current time in the comments. Now listen carefully. Have you ever woken up and checked your phone, only to realize it knows something about your night that you don't? I don't mean sleep statistics. I don't mean the usual stuff like how many times you tossed around, or how long you were in REM sleep, or whatever those apps claim to know. I mean something real, something recorded, something with your voice in it, something that proves you were not alone. My name is Claire. I was 26 when this happened, and at the time I lived in a small apartment in Columbus, Ohio, just outside the short north area. Not downtown enough to feel exciting, not suburban enough to feel quiet. It was one of those older brick apartment buildings with radiator heat, thin walls, narrow staircases, and mailboxes that never closed properly. The kind of place where you knew your upstairs neighbor's morning alarm song by heart, but you still didn't know their name. I worked as a dental receptionist then. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. I answered phones, scheduled cleanings, argued with insurance companies, and smiled at people who were usually in pain or annoyed. My life was simple in that boring, safe way you don't appreciate until after something ruins it. That winter, I had just gone through a breakup. His name was Caleb. We had been together almost 3 years. Long enough that our routines had mixed together. Long enough that he knew the brand of oat milk I bought, the passcode to my old phone, the way I took my coffee, and the fact that I slept with one foot outside the blanket because I got too warm at night. It wasn't one of those dramatic breakups where plates get thrown and someone screams in a parking lot. It was worse in a quieter way. Caleb had become controlling little by little. At first it seemed protective. Then it became exhausting. He wanted to know who texted me, why I took 20 minutes to answer, why I wore makeup to work, why I didn't call him before bed even though I was tired. The final straw was when I found out he had been logging into my Instagram from his laptop for months. He said he only did it because he was worried about me. That was always his line. I worry because I love you. I ended it in early January. He cried, apologized, sent long messages, then angry ones, then apologetic ones again. I blocked him after a week. I changed my passwords. I told myself I was starting fresh. But the thing about starting fresh is that nights get very long when you're used to someone being there, even if that someone wasn't good for you. I started sleeping badly. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. with my heart racing for no reason. I'd hear the radiator click and think someone was in the room. I'd dream that my phone was ringing and wake up with my hand already reaching for it. One of my coworkers, Maya, told me to download a sleep tracking app. It records snoring and talking, she said. It helped me figure out my upstairs neighbor wasn't actually dropping bowling balls at night. It was my boyfriend kicking the wall in his sleep. I laughed, but that night I downloaded one. I won't say the real name of the app, because I don't think it matters. It was one of those sleek wellness apps with a moon icon and calming blue graphics. You put your phone face down near your pillow, and it tracks movement and sound. In the morning, it gives you a little timeline of your sleep and saves audio clips if it detects noise. The first few nights were normal. A cough, sheets rustling, one recording of me muttering something about toothpaste, which I still don't understand. It was embarrassing, honestly, but kind of funny. It made me feel less alone in a stupid way, like my phone was keeping watch while I slept. Then, on the 5th morning, there was a recording that was different. It was 18 seconds long. The app labeled it sleep talking. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed, still half under the blanket, gray morning light coming through the blinds. My room smelled like the lavender spray I used because I was trying to become the kind of person who relaxed. Outside, someone was scraping ice off a windshield. I pressed play. At first, there was just silence. Then a soft rustle, like fabric moving. Then my voice. Not awake. Not normal. A whisper. Are you there? I felt my stomach tighten. There was a pause. Then another whisper answered. Yeah. I dropped my phone. It landed on the blanket, screen up, the audio still playing. The voice was low, quiet, and close to the microphone, and it sounded exactly like Caleb. Not kind of. Not in the way where your brain fills in the blanks because you're scared. It sounded like him. His tired late-night voice. The one he used when he didn't want to wake me. I grabbed the phone and stopped the recording so fast my thumb slipped twice. For a minute, I just sat there. Then I played it again. Are you there? Yeah. That was it. No footsteps. No door. No breathing. Just me whispering a question into the dark, and someone answering like they were right next to me. I told myself it was nothing. I know that sounds stupid, but that's what you do when something makes no sense. Your brain starts working overtime to file it under normal, so you don't have to deal with what it might actually mean. Maybe it was audio from some old video. Maybe the app glitched. Maybe the neighbor said something through the wall, and my half-asleep brain made it sound like Caleb. Maybe I had dreamed about him and whispered to myself. I sent the clip to Maya. She replied almost immediately. Girl, that is creepy. Then another message. Is that Caleb? Seeing his name on my screen made my skin prickle. I typed, it can't be. He doesn't have a key. That wasn't exactly true. He had given me back my key after the breakup. I watched him take it off his keychain and put it on my kitchen counter. But he had lived there for months. He had gone to the hardware store for me before. He was the kind of person who thought 5 steps ahead when he wanted control. Still, I told myself I was being paranoid. That night, I put a chair under the door handle. Not because I believed someone was coming in, just because I wanted to sleep. I didn't. Every sound felt louder. The heater ticking, cars passing outside, the hum of the fridge in the kitchen. Somewhere around 2:30, I thought I heard the floor creak near my bedroom door, but when I turned on the lamp, nothing was there. In the morning, the app had 3 recordings. The first was just me shifting. The second was a car horn outside. The third was 29 seconds. I stared at it for so long my screen dimmed. Then I played it. There was breathing at first. Mine, I think. Slow and uneven. Then my voice whispered, "Don't stand there." The silence after that felt endless. Then his voice. "I'm not." I stopped the clip and threw my phone across the bed like it had burned me. My whole body went cold. Not goosebumps cold. Deeper than that, like my bones had understood something before my mind could catch up. I got out of bed and checked the apartment. Closet, bathroom, kitchen, living room, behind the shower curtain, because apparently fear turns everyone into a cliché. Nothing. The chair was still under the door handle. The windows were locked. I lived on the 2nd floor, and the fire escape was outside the living room window, but that window had one of those cheap twist locks. It was still latched. I called Maya instead of going to work. She came over with coffee and this serious look I had never seen on her before. We sat at my tiny kitchen table and listened to both clips again. Hearing them in daylight didn't help. If anything, it made them worse. The apartment looked normal. Dishes in the sink. A grocery list stuck to the fridge. My work shoes by the door. And then that voice coming out of my phone. "Claire," Maya said, "you need to call the police." I did. The officer who came was polite, but I could tell he didn't know what to do with me. He was younger than I expected, with red cheeks from the cold and a notebook he barely wrote in. I played him the recordings. He listened carefully, then asked if I lived alone. Yes. Any history of sleepwalking? No. Any chance your ex-boyfriend still has access to the apartment? I don't think so. He checked the lock, looked at the windows, took Caleb's full name and number, and said something I hated immediately. At this point, it's concerning, but we don't have proof someone entered. I remember gripping my mug so hard my knuckles hurt. There's a man's voice in my bedroom at night. He nodded, and I don't think he was dismissing me exactly, but he was trying to keep it practical. It could be sound from another unit. These older buildings carry noise in strange ways. Maya said, "It sounds like he's right next to her." "I understand," he said. "I'd recommend changing the locks, documenting everything, and maybe not sleeping here alone for a few nights." That was the official advice. Change the locks. Document everything. Maybe sleep somewhere else. I hated how small it sounded. That afternoon, My landlord sent a maintenance guy to change the lock. His name was Ron, and he smelled like cigarettes and sawdust. He installed a new deadbolt and told me, "Nobody's getting through this unless they kick the door in." He laughed when he said it. I didn't. For the next 2 nights, I stayed with Maya. Nothing happened there. The app recorded her dog snoring and me rolling around on an air mattress. No whispers. No Caleb. By Sunday, I felt embarrassed. That's another part people don't talk about. Fear can make you feel ridiculous after a few calm days. You start wondering if you overreacted. You think maybe everyone secretly thinks you're unstable. So I went home. The apartment smelled stale when I walked in, like closed windows and old heat. I checked every room, then checked them again. I put a towel at the bottom of the front door so I could see if it moved. I balanced a glass on the inside handle, like I had seen in some movie. I placed my phone on the nightstand, sleep app running, and lay down with all the lights on. I woke up at 4:12 a.m. I know because the clock on my phone was glowing beside me. The bedroom was dark. I had turned the lamp off at some point without remembering. That alone scared me because I didn't remember deciding to do it. For a few seconds, I didn't move. Then I heard something. A soft click. Not from inside my room. From the hallway. I held my breath. Another sound came, so faint I almost convinced myself it wasn't real. Footsteps. Slow. Careful. Barely there. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway made me freeze, every nerve in my body screaming that I was not imagining this. My bedroom door was open about 4 inches. I never slept with it open. I had closed it. I was sure of that. Through the gap, I could see a thin slice of hallway. Dark carpet. A bit of baseboard. Nothing else. Then the slice of darkness changed. Something moved past it. Not fast. Not rushing. Just a shadow crossing the crack in the door. My heart sank into my stomach as I realized someone was inside my apartment. I don't remember grabbing my phone. I only remember it being in my hand. My thumb found the emergency call screen, but I didn't press it right away because a stupid part of me thought, what if I'm wrong? What if I call and it's nothing? Then my bedroom door opened another inch. Just 1 inch. The hinge made the tiniest sound. That was enough. I pressed call. The dispatcher answered, and I couldn't speak at first. My mouth was dry. My tongue felt too big. Finally, I whispered, "Someone is in my apartment." She asked for my address. I gave it. She told me to stay where I was if I was safe, or leave if I could. I wasn't safe, but leaving meant crossing the room, opening the window, climbing onto the fire escape. My bedroom window faced the side alley, not the fire escape. The fire escape was in the living room. I heard the floor creak again. Closer. I slid off the bed as quietly as I could and crawled to my closet. It was a small reach-in closet with sliding doors that never stayed on the track. I got inside and pulled one door mostly shut. I could hear the dispatcher asking questions through the phone pressed against my chest. Her voice sounded far away. Then someone entered my room. I couldn't see them clearly through the closet gap. Just a shape. Tall. Dark jacket. Gloves. They stood at the foot of my bed for a long moment. My phone screen lit up against my shirt, and I panicked, turning it inward so the glow wouldn't show. The person leaned over my bed, like they were looking for me. Then a voice whispered, "Claire?" It was Caleb's voice. My entire body went numb. Not because I thought it was romantic or tragic or any of that garbage people put in movies. It was horrifying. Hearing a familiar voice in a place it did not belong is its own kind of violation. It makes your memories feel unsafe. He whispered again, "Claire, I know you're awake." I clapped my hand over my mouth. The dispatcher must have understood, because she stopped asking questions and only said, very quietly, "Officers are on the way. Stay hidden." The person turned toward the closet. I could see him better then. Only he wasn't Caleb. That was the part that still messes with me. The man standing in my room had Caleb's voice, but he was not Caleb. He was older, maybe late 30s or early 40s. Thin face, short hair, pale skin. I had seen him before, but it took a second for my brain to place him, because fear makes familiar things strange. He lived in my building, third floor. He was the man who always held the front door too long when I came in behind him. The one who said evening in the stairwell. The one I had seen carrying grocery bags, wearing headphones, looking completely normal. His name was Daniel. I only knew that because his mail sometimes ended up in my box. He took one step toward the closet. I remember thinking, stupidly, that my slippers were sticking out. They weren't, but my brain kept finding tiny problems to panic over. Then police sirens sounded outside. Not loud at first, just a distant rise getting closer. Daniel froze. For 1 second, his face changed. Not scared exactly, more irritated, like someone had interrupted him. Then he walked out of my room. I heard him moving quickly through the apartment. A thud, something scraping. Then my front door opened and slammed. The glass I had balanced on the door handle shattered. I stayed in the closet until the police were inside my bedroom calling my name. When I crawled out, I was shaking so hard I couldn't stand. One officer wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. Another checked the apartment. The dispatcher was still on the phone, asking if I was okay, and I remember saying, he had Caleb's voice, over and over again. They caught Daniel in the alley behind the building. He had tried to climb the back fence and slipped on ice. He didn't fight them. He just kept saying he hadn't done anything, that he was checking on me because he heard me screaming. I hadn't screamed. When the police searched his apartment later, they found things that made the recordings make sense in the worst possible way. He had been watching me for months. Not in some movie villain way with walls covered in photos, but in a small, organized, practical way that felt even more disturbing. He had a notebook with my work schedule written in it, my usual grocery days, the times I left for the gym, the nights Caleb used to come over. He knew when Caleb stopped coming over. He had photos of my front door, my car, the lobby mailboxes, and he had audio. A lot of it. Some of Caleb's voice had come from videos I had posted online years earlier. Birthday clips, stupid couple videos, vacation stories. I had forgotten most of them existed. Daniel hadn't. He had saved them, cut them up, and used some voice software to make phrases. The police told me he had a small speaker, black, about the size of a matchbox. He had taped it under the back edge of my nightstand during a maintenance visit. That's how he did it. A maintenance visit. 2 months before the breakup, my bathroom sink had been leaking. The landlord sent Ron, the regular maintenance guy, but Daniel had come with him because he helped out around the building sometimes. I remembered him standing in my hallway, holding a toolbox, smiling politely. He must have placed the speaker then. It had been connected to a cheap device hidden behind the radiator, using my Wi-Fi. Caleb had known my old Wi-Fi password, and apparently I had never changed it after the breakup. Daniel got it somehow. Maybe he overheard it. Maybe Caleb had said it out loud once. Maybe it was written on the router sticker before I changed the network name. I'll never know. The sleep app didn't cause anything. It caught it. That realization made me feel sick. Without the app, I might have kept waking up tired, uneasy, telling myself grief and stress were making me imagine things. Daniel had been talking to me while I slept. Sometimes with Caleb's voice. Sometimes, the police said, with his own. They found more recordings on his laptop. I never listened to them. I refused. But a detective told me enough. There were clips of me sleeping, clips of me mumbling, clips where he whispered my name and waited for me to respond. At least twice, he had been inside my apartment before that night. I asked how. The detective looked uncomfortable and said Daniel had a copied key to several units. He had done informal maintenance work for the landlord for years. Nobody had thought much of it. He was quiet, helpful, paid rent on time. The kind of man people described afterward as a little odd but harmless. Harmless is a word people use when they haven't been the target. I also learned that Caleb had nothing to do with it. That was its own strange kind of pain. For days, I had pictured him outside my door. I had blamed him in my head. And yes, he had been controlling. Yes, he had crossed lines. But this wasn't him. When the police contacted him, he was apparently furious and scared. He called me from an unknown number, and I answered because I thought it might be a detective. The second I heard his real voice, I started crying. He said, "Claire, I swear to God it wasn't me." I said, "I know." Then neither of us said anything for a while. He apologized for the things he had done during our relationship. Not in a dramatic way, just quietly. I don't know if he meant it fully, or if fear had shaken something loose in him. It didn't fix anything. It didn't make us friends. But it was the last time we ever spoke. I moved out of that apartment within a week. My parents drove down from Cleveland and packed my things while I sat on the couch feeling like a guest in my own life. My mom cried when she found the tape marks under my nightstand. My dad got very quiet, which was worse. Maya stayed with me every night until I left. The landlord tried to act shocked, like Daniel had fooled everyone. Maybe he had. Maybe that was true. But I couldn't get past the fact that this man had access to my home because people kept deciding he was safe enough. There was a hearing months later. I didn't have to see Daniel for long, but I saw him once across the room. He didn't look like a monster. That bothered me more than anything. He wore a button-down shirt. His hair was combed. He looked tired and pale. Just some man. Just someone you might stand next to in line at a pharmacy. Someone you'd hold the elevator for if your hands were full. He never explained why he did it. Not really. His lawyer tried to make it sound like loneliness, like mental health, like obsession that got out of hand. I'm not saying those things weren't involved, but I hate when people use words that make it sound soft. He studied me. He waited. He found a weak point in my life and pushed his way through it. That wasn't loneliness. That was choice. It's been 4 years now. I live in a different city, different apartment, 3rd floor, newer building, cameras in the lobby, deadbolt I installed myself, doorbell camera, window sensors, passwords changed every few months. I don't post much online anymore. When I do, it's never in real time. I don't show my windows. I don't show my street. I don't show the inside of my home if there's anything identifiable in the background. I still use a sleep app sometimes. People think that's strange when I tell them. They ask why I would ever want to record the night again after what happened. The answer is simple. Silence doesn't comfort me anymore. Proof does. Most mornings there's nothing. The fan. A car outside. Me turning over. Once, my cat knocked a book off the dresser and scared me so badly I almost called the police before I was fully awake. But every time I press play on a recording, there's a second where my body remembers that first whisper. Are you there? And the answer, yeah. That's the part that stays with me. Not Daniel's face. Not even the night he came into my room. It's the thought of all the nights before I knew. All those dark hours where I slept, completely helpless, while a man in the same building whispered to me through a speaker he had hidden inches from my head. The street looked ordinary. The building looked ordinary. My life looked ordinary. That's what people don't understand until something like this happens. Danger doesn't always kick down the door. Sometimes it pays rent upstairs. Sometimes it says good evening in the stairwell. Sometimes it waits until you're sad and tired and alone, then uses a voice you used to trust. I used to think the scariest thing would be waking up and seeing someone standing over me. But I was wrong. The scariest thing was hearing proof that someone had been there all along, and realizing I had slept through it. Story 2. Have you ever woken up already scared? Not because of a nightmare. Not because of a sound. Not even because you saw something. Just scared. Like some part of your body woke up before your brain did and knew something was wrong. That happened to me almost every night for 3 weeks after I moved into my first apartment alone. And every time, I would open my eyes in the dark, frozen under my blanket, because the empty side of my bed was pressed down like somebody was lying there next to me. My name is Mara. I was 28 when this happened, living in a small city in Oregon, in a neighborhood that looked safe in the way old neighborhoods do. Big trees, narrow streets, little coffee shops with chalkboard signs, houses split into apartments, people walking dogs at dusk. The kind of place where nothing felt dangerous until it did. I had just left my ex, Daniel. I don't like calling him abusive, because for a long time, even after everything, That word felt too big, too dramatic. He didn't walk around acting like a monster. He had a good job. He tipped well at restaurants. He could make my parents laugh. He remembered birthdays. He was the kind of guy people described as intense, protective, passionate. But inside the relationship, it was different. He needed to know where I was. He needed to approve who I talked to. He would get quiet if I wore something he didn't like, then later ask who I was trying to impress. He never shouted much. That was the scary part. He just got calm, cold, like he had already decided I was guilty and was waiting for me to admit it. By the end, I wasn't really living. I was managing him. So when I finally left, I didn't tell him where I was going. I rented a one-bedroom apartment on the second floor of an old house that had been divided into 3 units. Mine was in the back, up a set of outside wooden stairs that always smelled faintly damp after rain. It wasn't fancy. The kitchen floor was yellowing linoleum. The bathroom sink dripped unless you turned the handle just right. The bedroom had one crooked window facing a narrow alley and a brick wall from the building next door. But it was mine. For the first time in years, I could come home and not explain why I was 10 minutes late. I worked as a receptionist at a dental clinic downtown. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. I answered phones, scheduled cleanings, dealt with insurance forms, and made polite small talk with patients who were nervous about root canals. My days were ordinary, almost boring. And at that point, boring felt like heaven. The first weird thing happened on my 4th night there. I woke up around 3:15 in the morning. I remember the time because my phone was face up on the nightstand, and the screen lit up when I moved. The room was cold. Rain was tapping softly against the window, and the heating vent made that low dusty hum old apartments always have. I was lying on my right side, facing the wall. Behind me was the empty half of the bed. At first, I didn't move because I was in that foggy half-awake state where your brain hasn't caught up yet. Then I felt the mattress shift. Not much, just enough. A slow dip behind me, like weight settling into the bed. My eyes opened all the way. I remember staring at the wall in front of me. There was a little crack in the plaster shaped like a crooked branch, and I focused on it like if I stared hard enough, nothing bad could happen. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. The dip stayed. The blanket behind my back tightened slightly, like it had been pulled down by someone's body. I told myself it was the mattress. It was old. I had bought it used off a woman on Facebook Marketplace, and maybe one of the springs was bad. Maybe the floor was uneven. Maybe I had dreamed the movement. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of the sheet behind me made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. For maybe a full minute, I didn't turn around. Then I forced myself to. The other side of the bed was empty, but the pillow had an indentation in it. Not huge, not dramatic, just a shallow dent, like someone had rested their head there. I sat up so fast I almost knocked my phone off the nightstand. I turned on the lamp, and the yellow light filled the room. Nothing. No one in the doorway. No one in the closet. No one crouched by the bed. I checked the front door. Locked. I checked the bathroom. Empty. I checked the tiny kitchen, even though there was nowhere to hide except behind the fridge if someone was built like a sheet of paper. Nothing. I didn't sleep again that night. I sat on the couch wrapped in a blanket with every light on, listening to rainwater trickle through the gutters. By morning, I had convinced myself it was stress. That's what everyone tells you after you leave someone like Daniel. Your body doesn't know it's safe yet. You're jumpy. You're hypervigilant. You hear sounds that aren't there. You see meaning in ordinary things. My friend Lena said the same thing when I told her at work. Mara, she said, lowering her voice because Mrs. Patterson was checking out at the front desk, you just got out of a nightmare relationship. Your nervous system is cooked. I know, I said. It just felt real. Of course it did. That doesn't mean it was. And honestly, I wanted her to be right. The next few nights, nothing happened. I started settling into a routine. I'd come home, lock the door, make dinner, take a shower, then watch something light on my laptop until I got sleepy. I bought a little chain lock for the door and one of those rubber wedges you stick underneath it. I also bought a cheap indoor security camera, mostly for peace of mind. It was a small white camera that sat on my dresser, angled toward the bedroom door in the bed. It recorded motion and saved clips to an app on my phone. The woman at the electronics store said, "Good for pets." I almost told her I didn't have pets. Instead, I just nodded. The first camera notification came 2 nights later. It was 2:48 a.m. I was asleep when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I woke up groggy, reached for it, and saw the alert. Motion detected. My heart started hammering immediately. I opened the app with shaking hands. The clip was 10 seconds long. Grainy black and white night vision. My room looked strange through the camera, flatter and colder than it really was. I could see myself sleeping on the left side of the bed, curled up with the blanket around my shoulders. For the first 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then, in the video, I turned my head slightly toward the empty side of the bed. That was it. No door opening. No shadow. No figure. Just me asleep, turning toward nothing. I watched it 5 times. The clip was so ordinary that it made me feel stupid for being scared. The camera had picked up me moving in my sleep. That was all. But then I looked at the bed beside me. The mattress was pressed down again. This time, I could see it clearly because the blanket was pulled tight into a slope, dipping toward the middle. Like someone had just been lying there and gotten up. I whispered, "No. I don't know why. It just came out." I lifted the blanket. Nothing. I checked under the bed. Nothing except a storage bin full of winter sweaters. Still, I dragged the bin out and left it in the hallway. Then I pushed the bed against the wall so there would be no empty side anymore. I slept with my back pressed to the plaster, facing the door. Or I tried to sleep. The next morning, I called my landlord, a man named Mr. Alvarez, and told him I thought someone might have a key. He was polite, but I could hear doubt in his voice. "Any signs of forced entry?" "No." "Anything missing?" "No." "Door locked when you checked?" "Yes." He paused. "These old houses make noises. They settle. And the locks were changed before you moved in. Could someone else have a copy?" "I don't see how." I hated how reasonable he sounded. I hated that I sounded crazy. He agreed to come by after work and look around. When he did, he checked the front lock, the window latch, the bathroom vent, the closet. He was in his 60s, patient, with tired eyes and paint on his jacket sleeve. He didn't make fun of me. That helped. The only thing he pointed out was a small square panel at the back of my bedroom closet, painted the same color as the wall. "That's just an access panel," he said. "Pipes run behind there. It should be screwed shut." He tugged on it. It didn't move. "See? Nothing." I nodded, embarrassed. After he left, I put a laundry basket in front of the closet door anyway. For a while things got better. Not normal, but better. Then Daniel texted me. I had blocked his number, but he used a new one. The message said, "You always sleep on the left side." I read it standing in the break room at work, holding a paper cup of burnt coffee. For a second, everything around me went quiet. The buzzing vending machine. Someone laughing near the sterilization room. A phone ringing at the front desk. All of it dropped away. I stared at the message until the words stopped looking like words. "You always sleep on the left side." I showed Lena. Her face changed. "That could mean from when you two lived together," she said, but she didn't sound convinced. "He knows," I whispered. "Knows what?" I couldn't say it out loud. That night, I didn't go home right away. I drove around for almost an hour, wasting gas, taking random streets, checking my mirrors like I was in some bad movie. The street looked ordinary, quiet, even comforting, but my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late that danger often wears a friendly face. When I finally pulled into the small gravel lot behind my building, I sat in my car with the doors locked and watched the windows. My apartment window was dark. The alley beside the building was dark. Everything was still. I climbed the stairs with my keys already in my hand, each step creaking under my weight. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling as I fumbled for the keys. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. Inside, everything looked normal. I checked the door, checked the windows, checked the closet, checked under the bed, even though it was against the wall now. I checked the shower curtain like an idiot. Nothing. I slept on the couch that night with the camera pointed toward the front door. At 3:03 a.m., the camera sent another alert. Motion detected. The clip showed the dark living room. The front door was shut. The chain lock was visible. The rubber wedge was still under the door. Then I saw myself. I walked into frame from the bedroom hallway. That should have been impossible, because I didn't remember getting up. In the video, I moved slowly like I was half asleep. My hair was hanging in my face. I stood in the middle of the living room for several seconds, facing the front door. Then I said something. The camera didn't record clear audio unless the room was quiet, but it was quiet. Too quiet. I turned the volume up. My own voice came through, small and sleepy. Stop standing there. Then the clip ended. I watched it again and again until my phone battery dropped to 10%. Stop standing there. I had no memory of saying it. No memory of walking into the living room. No memory of seeing anything. That morning I called in sick. Then I called the police non-emergency line. The officer who came was younger than I expected. Maybe early 30s. His name was Officer Grant. He stood in my living room while I showed him the texts, the camera clips, the indentation photos I had started taking like some obsessive detective. He took notes. He asked if Daniel had ever threatened me. I said, not exactly. What does not exactly mean? It means he said things that weren't threats unless you knew him. Officer Grant looked at me then, really looked. I told him about Daniel. Not everything. Just enough. The control. The messages. The way he always knew when I was lying even when I wasn't. The way he once showed up at a grocery store after I told him I was going to be home, and he said, smiling, I just had a feeling. Officer Grant told me to save everything. Don't respond. Document. If Daniel came near me, call 911. He also suggested I file for a protective order, but warned me it wasn't instant, and it wasn't armor. Before he left, he checked the apartment. He didn't find anything. Nobody ever found anything when they looked during the day. That was the pattern. The scariest things only happened at night, when the apartment was dark and the world outside was quiet. A week passed. Daniel kept texting from new numbers. At first, they were emotional. I miss you. I'm sorry. You can't just erase 2 years. Then they got angry. You think that place makes you safe? You're embarrassing yourself. Then one night, after I ignored all of them, he sent a photo. It was of my bed, not from inside my apartment. At least, I don't think so. It was taken from outside through the bedroom window, from the alley between my building and the brick wall next door. Because the angle was low and crooked, like someone had held the phone up while standing on something. In the photo, I was asleep. My face wasn't fully visible. Mostly the blanket and the shape of my body. But it was me. The timestamp on the message was 3:11 a.m. I saw it at 6:40 in the morning. I ran to the window and yanked the curtain open. The alley below was empty except for wet leaves, a trash bin, and an old wooden pallet leaning against the wall. My stomach turned. The pallet was directly beneath my window. Someone could have stood on it. Someone had stood on it. I called 911 that time. 2 officers came. They looked in the alley. They took a report. One of them found a muddy shoe print on the pallet, but it had rained, and the print was smeared. They went to Daniel's apartment, or at least they said they would. Later, they told me he claimed he had been home all night. No, they couldn't search his phone without more. No, the photo alone didn't prove he took it. No, they couldn't arrest him for sending a picture unless they could establish he had violated a law in a way that would hold. I remember standing in my kitchen, listening to Officer Grant explain it gently over the phone. So what am I supposed to do? I asked. There was a pause. Don't stay there tonight. I stayed with Lena for 3 nights. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor of a newer building with a locked lobby and bright hallway lights. I slept on her pull-out couch under a cat blanket, and for the first time in weeks, I actually slept. No mattress dip. No camera alerts. No texts. Daniel went quiet. That should have made me feel better. It didn't. Because when people like Daniel go quiet, they're not usually done. They're thinking. On Saturday afternoon, Lena drove me back to my apartment so I could grab more clothes and my work shoes. It was sunny, which made the whole thing feel less threatening. That's one of the cruel tricks your brain plays. Bad things feel impossible in daylight. We went up the stairs together. I unlocked the door. The apartment smelled wrong. Not terrible. Not like trash or smoke. Just different. Like dust had been stirred up. Lena noticed it too. Did you leave a window open? No. We walked in slowly. Nothing looked touched at first. The couch was fine. Kitchen was fine. Bathroom fine. Then I saw the bedroom. The bed had been moved away from the wall. Only about a foot. Just enough to create space on the other side again. Lena said, "Oh my God." My closet door was open. The laundry basket I had kept in front of it was lying on its side. The access panel at the back of the closet was still closed, but two of the screws were slightly stripped. Fresh scratches in the paint curled around them. My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. I say alone, even though Lena was right beside me. Because fear does that. It shrinks the world until all you can feel is yourself and the thing that wants you. Lena grabbed my arm. "We're leaving." We did. We didn't even take clothes. Outside, she called the police while I stood in the gravel lot staring up at my bedroom window. A neighbor from the downstairs unit, Mrs. Voss, came out in slippers and a cardigan. She was in her 70s, with short white hair and a cigarette voice. "Everything all right?" she asked. Lena said, "Someone broke into her apartment." Mrs. Voss looked up at my window, then at me. "Is this about that man?" My skin went cold. "What man?" She hesitated. "The one who used to come around the back. Tall. Dark jacket. I thought he was your boyfriend." "When?" She looked uncomfortable. "I don't know. A few nights here and there. Late. I only saw him from my kitchen window." "Did he go upstairs?" "No. That's why I thought it was strange. He'd go around the side." "Around the side where?" She pointed toward the narrow gap between the house and the neighboring building. "There's a basement entrance back there, for the old utility room." I turned to Lena. She looked like she might be sick. When the police arrived, Mrs. Voss told them the same thing. Mr. Alvarez came too, confused and upset, jangling keys in his hand. "There's no basement access to her unit," he said. But he led everyone around the side of the building anyway. Behind a leaning fence panel and a mess of ivy, there was a rusted metal door set low into the foundation. Mr. Alvarez unlocked it with a key he said he hadn't used in years. The smell that came out was wet concrete, old wood, and something stale. Nobody let me go down there. I didn't want to. The officers did. They were down there for maybe 10 minutes. When they came back up, their faces were different. Officer Grant asked Mr. Alvarez, "Where does that access panel go?" Mr. Alvarez said, "Pipe chase. Behind the closets. It shouldn't connect to anything." But it did. Not in a way that made sense for a normal person. Not in a way you'd notice unless you were looking for it. The house had been renovated badly, probably decades before. Behind the bedroom closets in the upstairs units was a narrow, unfinished crawl space. It ran along the back wall, boxed in around pipes and old ductwork. The access panel in my closet opened into it. It was small, too small to stand, but big enough for someone to crawl. And from the basement utility room, there was an old opening into that same crawl space, hidden behind a loose sheet of plywood. Someone had been using it. The police found a black hoodie in there, a small flashlight, a portable phone charger, empty water bottles, a pair of gloves, and tucked into a gap between the studs, a folded blanket. They also found a cheap second-hand tablet connected to a Wi-Fi network. Mine. Daniel had my Wi-Fi password because I had used the same password I used at our old place. Stupid, I know. But when you're starting over, you don't always think like a criminal is studying you. The tablet was logged into the app for my bedroom camera. That's why the footage showed nobody entering. Because he knew where the camera was pointed. because sometimes he was already inside the wall before I got home. I wish I could explain what it feels like to learn that the empty side of your bed wasn't empty. That the thing you tried to explain away as stress, sleep paralysis, an old mattress, trauma, bad dreams was a person. A real person. Someone you knew. Someone who had once held your hand in public and kissed your forehead and said he loved you. Someone who had crawled through the bones of an old house to watch you sleep. The police didn't let me back into the apartment alone. Lena went in with an officer and grabbed some clothes, my laptop, my documents, and a box of photos I didn't even want anymore. Daniel was arrested later that night. Not dramatically. Not in some movie scene. They found him at his apartment. He denied everything at first, then said I was unstable, that I had invited him, that we were working things out. He said the stuff in the crawlspace wasn't his. But they had enough by then. The messages. The photo. Mrs. Voss seeing him. The tablet. His fingerprints on the flashlight. And one more thing. This part still makes me feel cold. When they searched his car, they found a copy of my apartment key. Not the front door key. The key to the basement utility room. Mr. Alvarez had no idea how he got it. Maybe from a previous tenant. Maybe copied from a contractor. Maybe stolen. I never found out. I thought that was the end. It wasn't. Because the night after Daniel was arrested, I stayed with Lena again. She made pasta. We watched some dumb reality show and pretended to care who got eliminated. Around midnight, she went to bed, and I stayed on the couch scrolling through my phone, too wired to sleep. I kept opening the camera app. I don't know why. Habit. Obsession. The bedroom camera was still in my apartment, still plugged in on the dresser. I hadn't taken it because I didn't want to go back into that room longer than necessary. At 12:46 a.m., the camera sent a notification. Motion detected. My whole body went numb. I opened it. The room appeared in black and white. The bed was unmade, pulled away from the wall, sheets twisted from when Lena had grabbed my clothes. The bedroom door was open. The closet door was also open. For a moment, nothing moved. Then the access panel at the back of the closet shifted inward. Slowly. Just an inch. Then two. I stopped breathing. A hand came through. Not a ghost hand. Not pale and floating. Just a normal human hand, fingers dirty, knuckles scraped. It pushed the panel wider. Then a face appeared in the dark gap behind it. Not Daniel's. I dropped the phone. Lena woke up because I screamed. I barely remember the next few minutes. I remember her grabbing the phone off the floor. I remember her saying, oh my God, over and over. I remember calling 911 and not being able to get the words out. The police went back to my apartment. They didn't find the person, but they found something they had missed the first time. The crawl space behind my closet didn't only connect to the basement. It connected, through a broken section of wall, to the neighboring building. The brick building next door wasn't abandoned exactly, but the ground floor had been vacant for months. It used to be a little print shop. The upstairs was storage. Whoever had come through that night had entered from there. And that's when the story stopped being just about Daniel. According to the police, Daniel had not been working completely alone. There was a man named Travis who rented storage space in the building next door. I had never met him. I had probably passed him on the sidewalk and never noticed. He was 42, quiet, no record serious enough to make anyone suspicious. He did odd jobs, repairs, hauling, that kind of thing. Daniel had hired him months earlier to check on me, according to messages found later. At first, Travis claimed he didn't know what Daniel was doing. Then he claimed Daniel said I was his girlfriend and he was worried about me. Then he claimed I liked being watched. That was the part that made me understand something I wish I hadn't. People like Daniel don't always need to do everything themselves. Sometimes they find someone willing to help. Someone with keys. Someone with access. Someone who enjoys being useful to the wrong person. Travis disappeared for 2 days before they picked him up at a bus station. I never saw his face in person. Only in that camera clip. Even after escaping, even with the safety of the police lights behind me, a small, cold part of me couldn't stop replaying the face I'd seen through the window. The calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. Except it wasn't through the window. It was through my closet wall. That somehow felt worse. I moved out before the end of the week. Mr. Alvarez returned my deposit and apologized so many times I started feeling bad for him, which is ridiculous. It wasn't my job to comfort anyone. But fear makes everything messy. I moved in with my older sister for 3 months. I filed for a protective order. I changed my phone number. I deleted old accounts. I changed every password I had ever used twice. I stopped posting anything online. I checked my car for trackers because Officer Grant told me to, and because by then paranoia felt less like paranoia and more like basic hygiene. Daniel eventually took a plea deal. Travis did too. The sentences were not what people imagine when they hear stories like this. Nobody went away forever. Nobody got locked in a dark hole where they could never hurt anyone again. That's not usually how it works. The legal system moved slowly. Paperwork, hearings, delays. Words like burglary and harassment and unlawful surveillance got used in rooms that smelled like carpet cleaner and old coffee. I gave a statement once. My voice shook the whole time. Daniel never looked at me. Not once. He stared at the table like he was bored. That might have been the worst part. Not rage. Not tears. Just boredom. Like I had inconvenienced him by refusing to stay scared quietly. It's been almost 2 years now. I live in a different city. I won't say where. My apartment is on the 4th floor of a newer building with cameras in the lobby, deadbolts, no crawl spaces, no basement access, and windows that don't face anything climbable. I sleep in the middle of the bed. That sounds like a joke, but it isn't. For a long time, I couldn't sleep on one side. I couldn't leave space beside me. If I woke up and felt the blanket pulled wrong, I would turn on every light and check the whole apartment. I still do sometimes. I still don't like closets. Before I go to bed, I open mine and look inside. I touch the back wall. I push on it with my hand, just to make sure it's solid. Sometimes I feel stupid doing it. Then I remember the access panel. I remember the mattress dipping beside me in the dark. I remember watching myself on camera, asleep, turning towards someone who knew exactly how to stay out of frame. People always ask why I didn't leave sooner, why I didn't call police earlier, why I didn't know. But that's the thing about fear when it comes from someone you loved. At first, it wears a familiar face. It sounds like concern. It sounds like jealousy. It sounds like, I just need to know you're safe. It sounds like apologies and promises and inside jokes and memories you don't know how to throw away. Then one day, you wake up and realize the person who said they couldn't live without you has been living inside your walls. So I'll say this as plainly as I can. If you leave someone and they refuse to be left, take it seriously. If something feels wrong in your home, don't explain it away just because the explanation sounds impossible. And if you ever wake up in the middle of the night and the empty side of your bed is pressed down like someone just got up, don't close your eyes. Turn on the light. Story 3. Have you ever woken up and felt like someone was already awake with you? Not in the same room exactly. Not at first. Just that strange little feeling like the air has changed while you were sleeping. Like your apartment is holding its breath. Like if you turned your head too fast, you'd catch something that had been watching you for a long time. That's what it felt like the first night I got the message. My name is Claire. I was 26 when this happened, living alone in a 1-bedroom apartment in Fort Collins, Colorado. It wasn't a bad area. It wasn't fancy either. Just one of those older apartment buildings with beige siding, chipped stair rails, and laundry machines in the basement that ate quarters and never fully dried anything. I worked in billing for a small dental office downtown. Nothing exciting. I answered calls, processed claims, drank too much coffee, and came home tired enough most nights that I barely had the energy to make dinner. My life was quiet, predictable, honestly, boring in a way I used to be grateful for. My apartment was on the 2nd floor, at the end of the hallway. The bedroom window faced the back parking lot and a line of pine trees behind the building. At night, the lot was lit by one flickering security light that made everything look like it was underwater. Cars, dumpsters, the stairwell, all of it dull and gray. I had been single for about 5 months. My ex, Ryan, and I had dated for almost 2 years. He wasn't some movie villain. That's part of what made everything harder to explain later. He could be sweet, funny. He remembered small things, like how I hated cilantro and liked my coffee with too much cream. But he was also clingy in a way that slowly turned into something else. At first it was text me when you get home. Then it became why didn't you answer? Then it became him showing up outside my office because I hadn't replied during lunch. By the end, I felt like I had to report my whole day to him just to avoid an argument. When I broke up with him, he cried in my car for almost an hour. He kept saying, "You're going to regret this when you realize nobody knows you like I do." A week later, he sent me a long apology, then a longer one, then a bunch of drunk messages around midnight. Then nothing. I blocked him on everything except his phone number. I don't know why I didn't block that too. Maybe because some part of me still felt guilty. Maybe because I wanted proof in case he started again. Or maybe because it made me feel better seeing his name sit there silently, like the problem was contained. About 2 months after the breakup, I heard from a mutual friend that Ryan had moved back in with his dad in Wyoming. His phone had been shut off. Not just dead, not out of battery. Shut off. I knew because I called it once from my work phone after he sent a weird email, and the automated message said the number was no longer in service. So when my phone buzzed at 3:03 a.m. on a Wednesday night in October, and I saw his name on the screen, I thought I was dreaming. Ryan, good night. That was it. One word. I stared at it from my pillow, half awake, my room blue-black around me. The heater clicked in the corner. Somewhere downstairs, a pipe knocked softly in the wall. I remember blinking at the screen, waiting for the letters to rearrange into something else. Maybe a notification from an old chat. Maybe a calendar alert. Something normal. But it was his name. Ryan. Good night. I sat up slowly, still foggy, and opened the conversation. The last message before that was from months earlier, a paragraph from him about how I had given up on us too easily. Under it, dated that night, was the new text. 3:03 a.m. I didn't reply. I told myself it was some phone glitch. A delayed message. A carrier issue. Something that had been stuck in the system and finally came through. I don't know if that's even how phones work, but at 3 in the morning you'll believe almost anything if it lets you go back to sleep. I put the phone face down and lay there with my eyes open for a while. The apartment felt too quiet, but eventually I fell asleep. The next day, I showed the message to my coworker, Jess. She was older than me, around 35, with 2 kids and the kind of bluntness that made you feel both judged and protected. She frowned at my phone while we sat in the break room. Did you reply? No. Good. I thought his phone was disconnected. People get new phones. It came from his old number. Jess shrugged, but I could tell she didn't like it. Block it. I probably should. Not probably. Definitely. But I didn't. I wish I had a better reason. I just didn't. I think curiosity is one of the stupidest instincts humans have. It feels harmless right up until it isn't. That night, before bed, I put my phone on my nightstand and stared at it longer than I should have. Nothing happened at midnight. Nothing at 1. I remember waking up once around 2:40 because a truck drove through the parking lot with music thumping faintly through the walls. I checked my phone. No messages. Then at 3:03 exactly, the screen lit up. Ryan, good night. My stomach dropped in this small, cold way. Same word. Same time. I didn't touch the phone for a few seconds. I just watched the notification sit there, glowing in the dark beside my bed. Then another message appeared. Ryan, sleep tight, Claire. That one made me sit up. It wasn't just the words. It was seeing my name. I know that sounds dumb. He knew my name, obviously. He had known a lot more than that. But after months of silence, from a number that wasn't supposed to be active, it felt wrong. Like hearing someone whisper your name from a room you know is empty. I typed, "Who is this?" Then I deleted it. I typed, "Ryan?" Deleted that too. I locked my phone and turned on my lamp. My bedroom looked normal. Messy but normal. Laundry chair in the corner. Glass of water on the nightstand. Half-open closet door. The cheap white curtains moving slightly because the heater vent was under the window. I stared at the closet for a long time. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. It was probably someone upstairs. I know that now. I think I know that. The building was old, and sounds traveled strangely through the walls. Still, I didn't sleep much after that. The messages kept coming. Every night at 3:03. Ryan, good night. Sometimes just that. Sometimes a little more. Ryan, hope you had a better day. Ryan, you look tired today. Ryan, don't forget to lock the door. That last one came on a Friday night after I had forgotten to lock the door. I had gone grocery shopping after work and carried up too many bags at once because I didn't want to make 2 trips. I remember pushing the door shut with my hip, setting everything on the kitchen counter, and getting distracted because a jar of salsa broke inside one of the bags. By the time I cleaned it up and put everything away, I forgot the deadbolt. At 3:03, the message came through. Don't forget to lock the door. I checked. The deadbolt was turned the wrong way. I stood there barefoot in my kitchen, staring at it. My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. That was the first time I called Ryan's number. I pressed call with my thumb shaking. For about 3 seconds, there was nothing. Then the call failed. No ringing. No voicemail. Just failed. I tried again. Same thing. Then I called from my work phone the next morning. The automated voice said the number was not in service. But that night, at 3:03, it texted me again. Ryan, good night. I finally replied. Me, who is this? The typing bubbles appeared almost immediately. I had to grip the phone with both hands. Ryan, you know. Me, Ryan? Ryan, I miss when you slept on your left side. I threw the phone onto my bed like it had burned me. For a second, I couldn't move. My bedroom window was across from my bed. I slept with my curtains closed, but they were thin, cheap, the kind that block light, not shapes. I got up slowly and moved toward the window from the side, staying low like some idiot in a thriller movie. I pulled the curtain back just enough to look outside. The parking lot was empty except for my Honda, a silver pickup, and an older dark sedan I didn't recognize parked near the dumpster. I stared at that sedan. Nothing moved inside it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone in there had just ducked down. The street looked ordinary, quiet, even comforting, but my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late that danger often wears a friendly face. I called Jess the next morning. She answered on the 3rd ring, sounding like she was getting her kids ready for school. Block him, she said after I told her everything. No hesitation. Today. I don't even know if it's him. That makes it worse, Claire. I think someone can see into my room. Then call the police. And say what? My disconnected ex's number texts me good night. Yes. Say exactly that. I did call the non-emergency line. The woman who answered was polite, but I could hear that careful tone people use when they're trying not to make promises. She told me to document everything, take screenshots, contact my phone carrier, and call immediately if I saw someone on the property or felt in danger. I asked if they could trace the number. She said not unless there was a direct threat or an active investigation. Then she said, you may want to consider blocking it. Everybody kept saying that, but by then, blocking felt like closing my eyes. The messages were the only proof that something was happening. So I kept them. I started changing little things. I bought blackout curtains, real ones, thick dark gray ones that made my bedroom feel like a cave. I got a wooden dowel for the sliding window and wedged it into the track. I checked the deadbolt every night, then checked it again, then took a picture of it locked so I wouldn't get out of bed later wondering. I started parking closer to the stairwell. I stopped wearing headphones when I walked from my car to the apartment. For a few days, nothing changed except the messages. Ryan, good night. Ryan, you're being careful now. Ryan, proud of you. I didn't reply. Then on Monday, I found the envelope. It was tucked under my windshield wiper when I came out for work. A plain white envelope, damp from the morning frost. No stamp. No name. Inside was a photo. It was of me. Not from social media. Not an old picture. It was from the night before. I was standing in my kitchen, wearing an oversized blue sweatshirt and holding a mug. The photo had been taken from outside my apartment building, angled up toward my second-floor kitchen window. The blinds were tilted open, just enough that you could see me clearly between the slats. On the back, written in black pen, were 2 words. Sleep tight. I don't remember driving to work that morning. I remember sitting in the parking lot outside the dental office with the photo on my lap, unable to get out of the car. My hands were so cold they hurt. Jess came outside after I called her and opened my passenger door. She took one look at my face and said, "We're going to the police." This time they took a report. An officer named Ramirez met us in the lobby. He was calm, not dismissive exactly, but practical. He looked at the messages. He looked at the photo. He asked about Ryan. Full name. Last known address. Did he have keys to my apartment? Did he ever threaten me? Had he been violent? No, not exactly, no. I hated how weak it sounded. He asked if anyone else might have access to my apartment or personal information. I said maintenance had a master key. My landlord. Maybe the property manager. He told me to notify the landlord in writing, request a lock change, and keep saving every message. He also said they would try to contact Ryan. Try? I asked. If we can locate him. That scared me more than it should have. I called my landlord from the station. His name was Martin, and he was one of those older guys who acted like every repair request was a personal insult. A lock change, he said. You lose your key? No. Someone's stalking me. Silence. Then he sighed. Claire, nobody's getting into your unit. Those locks are fine. I need them changed. That's not cheap. I'll pay. That changed his tone. He said he'd send maintenance by the next day. Maintenance was a man named Dale. Mid-40s maybe. Quiet, round-shouldered, always smelling faintly like cigarettes and sawdust. I had seen him around the building plenty of times. He was the kind of person you nodded to without thinking. He came by Tuesday afternoon while I was home on my lunch break. Lock trouble, he asked. Just changing it. He looked at me for a second too long. Then he smiled. Can't be too careful these days. It was probably nothing. That was the problem. Everything was probably nothing until it wasn't. He changed the lock in about 15 minutes. I watched from the kitchen. He noticed and gave a little laugh. Don't trust me? I tried to smile. Just in a hurry. He held up the new key when he finished. Only 2 copies. One for you, one for the office. The office keeps one? Emergency access. I didn't like that, but I also didn't know what to say. That night, at 3:03, I got another message. Ryan, new lock looks nice. I stopped breathing. Then another. Ryan, but locks only help if the walls are honest. I stared at the screen until it went dim in my hand. The walls are honest. I didn't understand what it meant, but I knew I wasn't sleeping there. I called Jess. She told me to come over immediately. I packed a bag with random things because fear makes you stupid. 3 shirts, no socks. Toothbrush, no toothpaste. Laptop charger, no laptop. I kept looking at the bedroom closet, at the hallway, at the little vent above my bedroom door. It felt like the apartment had turned against me, every corner suddenly hiding a possibility. I stayed with Jess and her family for 3 nights. Her husband, Mark, walked me to my car every morning. Her kids asked why I was sleeping on the couch, and Jess told them I was having apartment trouble. For 3 nights, the messages still came. Ryan, good night. Ryan, you look safer there. Ryan, the couch is bad for your back. I didn't tell Jess that one until morning because I couldn't make myself wake her. I just sat in the dark living room, staring at the family photos on the wall, feeling like I had brought something poisonous into their home. The next day, Jess checked the front yard camera. There was nothing obvious. No stranger at the windows. No one standing on the porch. But around 2:58 a.m., headlights rolled slowly past their house. A dark sedan, too blurry to get the plate. It didn't stop. It just passed. Then passed again 5 minutes later, going the opposite direction. Jess wanted me to stay anyway. I couldn't. I know how that sounds, but when you're scared long enough, you start feeling like the fear itself is embarrassing. Like you're making people rearrange their lives around your problem. I also kept thinking about my apartment, sitting there empty, and the idea of someone being inside it while I was gone made me feel sick. So on Saturday afternoon, Mark came with me to check the place. Nothing looked touched. No broken window. No open door. No strange footprints. No creepy note on the pillow. Mark checked the closets. Under the bed. Behind the shower curtain. He even opened the kitchen cabinets, trying to make me laugh. Unless he's hiding in your crock pot, you're clear. I laughed because I wanted it to be funny. Then he checked the smoke detector in my bedroom. Not because he suspected anything. He just happened to look up and notice it was slightly crooked. He twisted it off the ceiling. A tiny black device was taped behind it. Not part of the smoke detector. Not anything I had put there. It was about the size of a coin, with a little pinhole in the center. A camera. For a second, nobody said anything. The room seemed to tilt. Mark looked at me, then back at the device, and his face changed completely. "Get your stuff," he said. "Now." We called the police again. This time, they came to the apartment. Officer Ramirez was one of them. He recognized me, which made the whole thing feel even worse, like I had crossed from worried woman into actual case. They found 2 more devices. One in the living room air vent. One behind a loose outlet plate, facing my bed. I sat on the stairs outside while they searched, wearing my coat even though it wasn't that cold. The neighbors came and went around me, pretending not to stare. Dale, the maintenance guy, walked in through the lobby carrying a toolbox, saw the police outside my door and paused. For just 1 second. Then he kept walking. I noticed because I was watching everybody by then. Officer Ramirez asked me if maintenance had been in my unit recently. "Yes," I said. "Dale changed my lock." He wrote it down. Later, they talked to Martin, the landlord. I wasn't there for that part, but Ramirez told me there were logs for maintenance requests, master key access, cameras in the lobby that sometimes worked and sometimes didn't, and a lot they still needed to sort out. They took the devices as evidence. I asked the question I was terrified to ask. Was someone watching live? Ramirez didn't answer right away. "That depends on the device," he said. But possibly. That word lived in my head for months. I didn't go back inside alone after that. I stayed with Jess again while I looked for somewhere else to live. My parents offered to let me come home to Loveland, but I still had work, and I didn't want to feel like I was running away. The messages stopped for 2 nights. No 303 text. No good night. Nothing. You'd think that would make me feel better. It didn't. It felt like when a buzzing refrigerator suddenly shuts off, and you realize how loud it had been the whole time. The silence was worse because it made me wonder what came next. On the 3rd night, I woke up before the message. 2:59 a.m. I was on Jess's couch again. The house was dark. Everyone asleep. Their golden retriever, Milo, was lying near the front door. At 3:03, my phone lit up. "Ryan, good night." Then, immediately after, "Ryan, tell Jess I said thanks." Then, "Ryan, but you need to come home." I didn't move. Milo lifted his head. I remember the little jingle of his collar in the dark. Then he growled. Not barked. Growled. Low and steady, staring toward the front window. My throat tightened. I slowly sat up and looked toward the curtains. There was a tiny gap between them, just enough to show the porch light outside. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a shadow moved across the glass. I couldn't see a face. Just the shape of a person passing close to the window, too close to be on the sidewalk. Milo exploded into barking. Jess's bedroom door opened upstairs. I grabbed my phone and called 911 with hands that barely worked. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling as I fumbled for the keys. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. Mark came down with a baseball bat. Jess stayed at the top of the stairs, whispering for the kids to stay in their rooms. The dispatcher kept asking me questions. Are they still outside? I don't know. Can you see them? No. Are your doors locked? I think so. Mark checked the front door and froze. The deadbolt was locked, but the handle was turning. Slowly. Not rattling. Not banging. Turning gently like someone was testing it. Milo barked so hard his paws slipped on the floor. Mark shouted, "Get away from the door." The handle stopped. For 3 seconds, there was nothing. Then my phone buzzed again. "Ryan, that dog is annoying." I started crying then. Not loud. It just happened. My body gave up pretending it was handling things. Police arrived in under 10 minutes, but whoever had been outside was gone. They found footprints in the damp mulch under the front window. They also found something on the porch, a folded piece of paper. Inside was a printed screenshot of my bedroom from the hidden camera. Me asleep in bed. The timestamp was from 2 weeks earlier. Written across the bottom in black marker were the words, "I still know how to say goodnight." After that, the police took it seriously in a way they hadn't before. Or maybe I just finally saw it happening around me. There were more questions, more reports, more people involved. They located Ryan. That was the strangest part. He was in Wyoming, just like I'd heard, working construction with his father, living in a house with bad cell service and no active phone under his old number. His dad confirmed his old phone had been shut off months earlier after Ryan stopped paying the bill. Ryan denied everything. I didn't believe him at first. I wanted it to be him, honestly. Not because that would be better, but because it would be understandable. He knew me. He had motive. He had history. But his alibi for several of the nights checked out. He had been at job sites, bars, even once at an urgent care 2 hours away. Not airtight for everything, but enough that Ramirez told me they were looking at other possibilities. The number, they said, had likely been spoofed or tied to an old account somehow. I didn't fully understand it. Something with messaging services, backups, devices still logged in, maybe a third-party app. They said it wasn't impossible for someone to make a message appear from a number that shouldn't be active. That sentence ruined phones for me. For a while they focused on Dale. He had access to apartments. He had changed my lock. He knew where the smoke detectors and vents were. He lived only 15 minutes away. When they searched his work locker, they found nothing. When they searched his truck, they found a roll of black electrical tape, which meant nothing because he was maintenance. He said he had no idea how the cameras got there. He also said something that still bothers me. When Ramirez asked him about me, Dale said, "She seemed like the nervous type." Not, "I barely know her." Not, "That's terrible." She seemed like the nervous type, but there wasn't enough to charge him. Then, about a week later, Martin called me. The landlord. He sounded nervous in a way I'd never heard before. He said the police had asked for old tenant records and camera access logs. Then he said there was something I should know, but he didn't want to make a big deal out of it. I told him to stop talking like a landlord and tell me. The apartment directly below mine had been vacant when I moved in, then rented 2 months later to a man named Kevin Shaw. I didn't know him. I had maybe seen him once in the hallway. Tall, thin, baseball cap, patchy beard. The kind of neighbor you forget immediately. He moved out suddenly around the time the messages started escalating. No notice. Rent unpaid. Left half his furniture. Police searched his old unit. There were small holes drilled into the ceiling. Right below my bedroom. Right below my living room. And in the closet, behind a loose panel, they found a plastic bin. Inside were printed photos of me. Not dozens. Hundreds. Me getting out of my car. Me carrying groceries. Me on the stairs. Me sitting at my kitchen table. Me asleep from the camera feed. Me at Jess's house, taken from across the street. There were also notes. Times I left for work. Times I came home. What I wore. Whether I was alone. And my old conversations with Ryan. Not all of them, but enough. Screenshots. Printed pages. Things I had deleted from my phone months earlier. The police never told me exactly how he got them. They said Kevin had worked briefly at a phone repair kiosk at the mall. I had taken my phone there about a year before for a cracked screen. I didn't even remember his face from that day. But he remembered mine. That was the part that made me feel sick. Ryan hadn't been the monster under the bed. He had just been the mask someone else used because he knew it would scare me. Because he knew I would hesitate. Because an ex-boyfriend is believable in a way a stranger isn't. Kevin had apparently been watching me long before the first message. Maybe before I moved in. Maybe from the first week I lived there. The cameras were installed through access from his unit and later during maintenance windows. They never proved Dale helped him, but they also never proved he didn't. Dale quit 2 days after Kevin's name came up and moved out of town. That's not a crime, but it didn't feel innocent either. Kevin disappeared. His car was found abandoned at a bus station outside Cheyenne. No sign of him. No confirmed sightings after that. The police said there was a warrant. They said these things take time. They said if he contacted me again, I should call immediately. He never did. Not directly. I changed my number. I changed apartments. I got a new phone, new email, new passwords. I stopped posting online. I bought a camera for my door and another for inside my living room. For months, I slept with the lights on. Sometimes people ask why I didn't notice sooner. I get it. From the outside, danger looks obvious once you know the ending. But when you're living it, it doesn't come all at once. It comes in pieces small enough to explain away. A text could be a glitch. A car could belong to a neighbor. A sound could be old pipes. A feeling could be anxiety. One night, months after I moved, I woke up at 3:03 without any alarm. My new bedroom was quiet. Different curtains. Different walls. Different parking lot outside. My phone sat charging across the room because I couldn't keep it near my bed anymore. No message. Nothing. Still, I lay there until sunrise, staring at the ceiling, listening for footsteps that never came. Even after escaping, even with the safety of the police lights behind me, a small, cold part of me couldn't stop replaying the face I'd seen through the window. The calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. I didn't tell you that part yet. At Jess's house, when Milo barked and Mark yelled at whoever was at the door, I saw him for 1 second. Not clearly, just enough. When the porch light caught the window, there was a face in the gap between the curtains. Pale. Still. Watching. He didn't look angry. He didn't look excited. He looked patient. That's what I remember most. Not the messages. Not the cameras. Not the photos. His patience. Like he had all the time in the world. I still don't sleep well. I check locks in a pattern now. Front door, window, closet, shower curtain. I know it's irrational. I know a locked door doesn't fix everything. But I do it anyway. And every once in a while, when my phone lights up late at night, my whole body reacts before my brain can. A friend texting. A delivery notification. A weather alert. Something normal. But for half a second, I'm back in that old apartment, staring at a message from a number that shouldn't exist, feeling the room shrink around me. Good night. That was all it took. One word at the wrong time. Sometimes the scariest part isn't what happened. It's knowing how long it was happening before I noticed. And if your gut ever tells you something is wrong, listen to it. Don't wait until the proof is sitting under your windshield wiper. Don't wait until the door handle starts turning. Because people like that don't need a reason. They just need access. They just need patience. And sometimes, all they need is for you to tell yourself it's probably nothing. Story 4. Have you ever woken up from a dream so real that, for a few seconds, you didn't trust your own room? I don't mean the kind where you're falling or being chased, and then you sit up sweating and laugh at yourself. I mean the kind where the air still feels shaped by what just happened. Where your sheets are twisted the same way they were in the dream. Where your body remembers something your mind is trying to explain away. That's how it started for me. My name is Owen. I was 19 when this happened, living in a quiet suburb just outside Eugene, Oregon. Not exactly the kind of place people picture when they think of something horrible happening. Our neighborhood had trimmed lawns, mailboxes shaped like little barns, and old people who waved from porches even if they didn't know you. At night, the loudest thing was usually the garbage truck brakes from the main road, or the neighbor's sprinkler ticking back and forth in the dark. I lived with my dad then. My mom had moved to Boise after the divorce, and my older sister was already married and gone. Dad worked nights as a maintenance supervisor at a hospital, which meant most evenings I had the house to myself. I was in community college, taking general classes because I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I also worked part-time at a grocery store, mostly closing shifts, stocking shelves, and cleaning up after people who seemed to forget they were in public the second they touched a shopping cart. My life was boring in the safest way. School, work, microwave dinners, homework I barely cared about, late-night gaming with friends. Sometimes I'd sit outside after midnight with a hoodie on, listening to the wind move through the trees and feeling like nothing in the world could reach me. Then I started dreaming about Lena. Lena was my ex-girlfriend. We dated for almost a year during senior year of high school and a little bit after graduation. I won't pretend it was some epic love story. We were teenagers. We cared about each other, but we were also dramatic, insecure, and too proud to say what we actually meant. The breakup was ugly in that quiet way breakups can be ugly. No big screaming fight in a parking lot. No thrown phone. Just weeks of short replies, jealousy over things that didn't matter, and one final conversation in my car outside her mom's apartment where she said, "You don't listen until I stop talking." I said something stupid back. Something cold. I don't even remember the exact words now, only the look on her face after I said it. Like I had closed a door she'd been trying to keep open. After that, we didn't talk. She blocked me on Instagram. I deleted our texts because seeing her name made me feel childish and pathetic. Every now and then I'd hear about her from mutual friends, but not much. She'd moved to Portland for school. She was doing fine. That was all I knew. Almost a year passed. Then one night in October, I dreamed she came to my bedroom door. In the dream, I was lying in bed exactly the way I had fallen asleep. Same room, same dark ceiling, same green glow from my alarm clock on the desk. My bedroom door was closed, and there was a thin line of hallway light under it. Then someone knocked. Not loud, just two soft taps. I remember feeling annoyed at first, like maybe Dad had come home early and needed something. I sat up and looked at the door. Another knock. Then Lena's voice came from the other side. "Owen." I froze. It sounded exactly like her. Not dreamlike, not muffled in some weird way. It was her voice, soft and tired. I said, "Lena?" There was a pause, and then she said, "Can I come in?" I don't know why, but in the dream I didn't get up. I just stared at the door. She said, "I'm sorry." That was the first thing. Just that. I remember my chest tightening in this strange, sad way. I hadn't realized how badly I'd wanted to hear those words from her until I heard them, even in a dream. "What are you sorry for?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Then I heard the doorknob turn. But the door didn't open. It stayed shut, and the knob slowly twisted back. Lena whispered. I tried. I woke up immediately after that. My room was dark. The hallway light was off. My alarm clock said 3:17 a.m. I lay there for a while, staring at my closed bedroom door. I told myself it was just one of those dreams your brain makes when you haven't dealt with something properly. I'd been stressed with school and work. Maybe I'd seen someone who looked like her. Maybe a song at the store reminded me of her without me noticing. That was all. In the morning, I forgot about most of it until I went to leave for class. There were fingerprints on my bedroom door. Not clear fingerprints, exactly. More like smudges. For long grayish marks around the side of the door near the handle, and a faint thumbprint lower down. Like someone had pressed their hand there with dirty skin. I stared at them for a while. My first thought was that I must have touched the door after working on my bike the day before. I'd been fixing the chain in the garage, and my hands had gotten greasy. That made sense. It had to. But the marks were high and angled in a way that didn't match how I usually grabbed the door. I rubbed them with my sleeve. They faded but didn't disappear. Then I went to class and tried not to think about it. That night, I dreamed about her again. Same room. Same door. Same thin line of light under it. even though in real life I slept with the hallway light off. The knock came. 2 taps. Owen. I already knew I was dreaming, which made it worse somehow. I sat up slowly. "Why are you here?" I asked. She sounded like she was crying, but quietly, trying not to make noise. "I'm sorry," she said again. "For what?" "For leaving it like that." This time I got out of bed. I walked to the door and put my hand on the knob. The second my fingers touched it, Lena said very softly, "Don't open it yet." That made me stop. "Why?" "I don't look right." The hallway went quiet. I remember standing there in the dream with my hand on the doorknob, feeling cold spread up my arm. "What does that mean?" I asked. No answer. Then I heard something slide down the other side of the door. A palm. Fingers dragging. Lena whispered, "I just wanted you to know I didn't hate you." Then I woke up. It was 3:17 a.m. again. I know that sounds like a movie thing. The same time. Too perfect. Too clean. But that's what it was. I looked at the clock, saw those numbers, and felt my stomach sink. I didn't turn on the light right away. I just stared at the shape of my bedroom door in the dark. Eventually I got up. The hallway was empty. The house was quiet. Dad wasn't home. The thermostat clicked on with a little plastic sound that made me flinch. I turned on the light and looked at the door. There was another mark. This one was longer, a darker smear about shoulder height, right where I had heard the hand slide down in the dream. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the hallway beyond my room looked too still, too narrow, and every nerve in my body was screaming that I was not imagining this. I took a picture of the door with my phone. Then I checked the front door, the back door, every window, even the garage. Everything was locked. The next morning I showed my dad. He had just come home from work, still wearing his hospital ID clipped to his jacket. He stood in my doorway with a cup of coffee and squinted at the smudges. "You sure you didn't do that?" he asked. "I don't think so." "You sleepwalk?" "No." He rubbed one of the marks with his thumb and shrugged. "Old house," he said. "Paint picks up everything. Wipe it down." That was Dad's way of handling anything strange. Reduce it until it became something practical. Dirt. Bad wiring. A raccoon in the crawl space. Anything but something he had to sit with emotionally. So I cleaned the door with soap and warm water. I scrubbed until the paint looked almost too clean compared to the rest of the room. For the rest of the day, I felt stupid. By evening, I had convinced myself the dreams were just dreams, and the marks were some weird coincidence. Then at work, around 9:30 p.m., I saw Lena. Or I thought I did. I was stocking cereal in aisle 4. The store was almost empty, just the hum of refrigerators and the distant beep of a scanner up front. I looked through a gap between boxes and saw a girl standing at the far end of the aisle. Dark hair, gray hoodie, head tilted slightly like she was reading something on the shelf. My whole body locked up. I stepped around the cart. The girl turned. It wasn't Lena. Not really. Her face was different. Older, maybe sharper. She glanced at me like I was being weird, then walked away with a basket. I stood there breathing too hard, holding a box of Raisin Bran like an idiot. My coworker Mason came around the corner and said, "You good?" I told him I was fine. But I wasn't, because that tiny moment had cracked something open. After that, I started seeing Lena everywhere. Not actually seeing her, but seeing pieces of her in strangers. A laugh from behind me. Someone's dark hair disappearing into a car. A girl wearing the same perfume she used to wear, passing me near the frozen section. By the time I got home that night, I felt exhausted in a way sleep doesn't fix. I should have stayed awake. I tried, actually. I made coffee, turned on every light in my room, and watched random videos on my laptop. Around 2:40 a.m., my eyes started burning. I remember resting my head against the wall, just for a second. Then came the knock. 2 taps. In the dream, the room lights were off again. I was in bed, even though I had fallen asleep sitting up. The line of hallway light glowed under the door. "Owen!" I didn't answer. "Owen, please." Her voice was closer this time, like her mouth was almost touching the wood. "I don't want to keep coming here," she said. I pulled the blanket up without meaning to. Like I was 10 years old again, and a blanket could stop anything. Then don't, I said. I can't find anywhere else. That sentence bothered me more than the apology. It had this helplessness in it that didn't feel like Lena. Lena had been stubborn. Even when she was sad, she was sharp about it. This voice sounded worn down. I said, "Where are you?" There was a pause. Then she said, "Outside the part you remember." I didn't understand, but I felt tears come to my eyes in the dream. Not because I was sad exactly, but because there was something wrong with hearing someone you used to care about sound that lost. She knocked again, but this time it wasn't 2 taps. It was 5 fingers pressing one after another against the door. Tap, 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 tap. Then she said, "I need you to forgive me before he gets here." I sat up. Before who gets here? The hallway light flickered. Lena's voice dropped lower. "He follows when I talk." Then something hit the other side of the door. Hard. The whole door shook in its frame. I woke up gasping. My laptop was still open on my desk, screen dimmed. My coffee had gone cold. The room lights were on. My clock said 3:17 a.m. I looked at the door. There was a handprint in the middle of it. Not a smudge this time. A full handprint. The palm was dark purple, almost black around the edges, like a bruise pressed into the white paint. 5 fingers spread wide. It looked painful. That's the only way I can describe it. Like the door itself had been hurt. I didn't move for almost a minute. Then I grabbed my phone and called my dad. He answered on the 4th ring, voice rough and annoyed. "What's wrong?" "Dad, there's someone in the house." That woke him up. "What do you mean?" "I don't know. There's something on my door." "Are the doors locked?" "I checked earlier." "Stay in your room. I'm calling Ronnie." Ronnie was our neighbor across the street, a retired sheriff's deputy who spent most of his time pressure washing his driveway or complaining about teenagers speeding. Dad called him, and within 5 minutes I saw Ronnie's porch light come on through my blinds. I heard the front door open downstairs. That sound almost made me scream, even though I knew it was Ronnie. The house had been so silent that the click of the lock felt like a gunshot. "Owen!" Ronnie called. I opened my bedroom door with my sleeve over my hand, like the print might do something if I touched it. Ronnie searched the whole house. Every room, every closet, the garage, the backyard. He had a flashlight and moved slowly, professionally. That should have made me feel better. It didn't. When he got to my bedroom door, he stared at the handprint for a long time. "What is that?" he asked. "I don't know." He leaned closer without touching it. "Paint." "No. You put your hand in something?" "It wasn't there before I fell asleep." Ronnie looked at me then. Not like he thought I was lying. More like he was deciding what kind of scared I was. He checked the doorframe and lock. No damage. No scratches. Nothing. "Could be someone messing with you," he said. "How would they get in?" He didn't answer. That was worse than if he had said anything else. Dad came home early that morning. He was worried, even though he tried to hide it. He bought a cheap indoor security camera from a hardware store and set it up on my desk, pointed at the bedroom door. Motion sensor, night vision, the whole thing. He also changed the front and back door codes. For one night, nothing happened. No dream. No knock. No handprint. I slept badly, waking up every hour, but I slept. The camera caught nothing except me tossing around like a fish. The next night, I dreamed again. But this time I wasn't in bed. I was standing in the hallway outside my room, facing my own closed bedroom door. That detail still makes my skin crawl when I think about it. In the other dreams, she had been outside and I had been inside. There was a boundary, a door between us. Now I was on her side. The hallway light buzzed above me. The carpet felt damp under my bare feet. My bedroom door was shut. From inside my room, Lena whispered, "Owen?" I couldn't move. She knocked from the inside. 2 soft taps. Then she said, "Don't let him know you heard me." Behind me, downstairs, something creaked. A footstep. Then another. Slow. Heavy. Not my dad's footsteps. Not Ronnie's. Not anyone I knew. I turned my head just enough to look down the stairs. At the bottom, there was a man standing in the dark. I couldn't see his face, only his outline. Tall, shoulders slightly hunched, one hand resting on the banister like he had all the time in the world. The street looked ordinary through the window beside him, quiet, even comforting, but my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late that danger often wears a friendly face. The man took one step up. Lena's voice hissed from inside my room. "Wake up!" I did. I woke up standing in the hallway. Not in bed. Standing. My bedroom door was behind me. My bare feet were cold on the carpet. My hand was on the outside of my bedroom doorknob. For 1 second, I didn't understand where I was. Then the house settled around me, dark and silent, and I realized I had sleepwalked out of my room. My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. Then I heard a creak downstairs. I stopped breathing. Another creak. I whispered, "Dad?" No answer. Dad was home that night. His door was closed at the end of the hall, but he was a heavy sleeper when he wasn't working. I backed into my room and shut the door. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely lock it. Then my phone buzzed on my desk. A notification from the security camera app. Motion detected. I opened it. The video showed my bedroom at 3:14 a.m. I was asleep in bed. The room was dark except for the night vision glow. At 3:16, I sat up. I didn't look around. I didn't check my phone. I just sat up like someone had pulled me by a string. Then I got out of bed and walked to the door. I opened it. I stepped into the hallway. The door stayed open for about 20 seconds. Then it slowly closed by itself. That alone would have scared me enough. But at the last second, before the door clicked shut, something moved in the gap. Not in my room. In the hallway behind me. A shape passed through the frame, too fast and too blurred to make out. But it was tall. Taller than me. It moved behind me as I walked away, like it had been waiting just out of view. I watched that clip maybe 10 times. Every time, I felt colder. I showed my dad in the morning. He watched it once, then again with his face very still. "That could be motion blur," he said. "Dad, I'm not saying it's nothing. I'm saying we don't know what it is." We called the police that day. 2 officers came by in the afternoon. They looked around, checked the locks, asked if I had enemies, if anyone had access to the house, if I was taking anything that could cause hallucinations or sleepwalking. I told them no. When I mentioned Lena, one of the officers asked, "Have you contacted her recently?" "No. Could she be messing with you? She lives in Portland." He wrote that down without much interest. We showed them the camera clip. They didn't laugh or anything, but I could tell it didn't land the way I wanted it to. To them, it was grainy footage of a teenager sleepwalking and maybe a shadow. Not proof. They told us to keep the doors locked, save any footage, and call if someone tried to get in. That was it. That's what people don't understand until something like this happens to them. The police can't arrest a bad feeling. They can't put handcuffs on a dream. They need a person, a threat, a broken window, a name. Something solid. And I had nothing solid except a door that looked like it had been grabbed by a dead hand. A week passed. The dreams came every night. Sometimes Lena apologized. Sometimes she cried. Sometimes she just stood behind the door and breathed. Once she said, "He knows your dad works nights." Another time she said, "You shouldn't leave the downstairs window unlocked." When I woke up, I checked the downstairs window. It was unlocked. My dad insisted he hadn't touched it. I hadn't either. We put wooden dowels in every window track after that. The handprints kept appearing, but not always on my bedroom door. One morning there was a purple smear on the inside of the front door, right next to the deadbolt. Another time there were 4-finger marks on the bathroom mirror after I dreamed Lena pressed her hand against glass and said, "I can see you better from here." That one almost broke me. I started sleeping with lights on. Then I stopped sleeping in my room and moved to the couch. Then I stopped sleeping downstairs because I dreamed Lena was standing on the porch, looking in through the living room window with a face I couldn't quite see. The worst part was how comforting the dreams still felt sometimes. That's the part one hated admitting. Lena would talk to me in this gentle, familiar voice, and for a few moments, I'd forget to be afraid. She'd say things I had wanted to hear for months. That she was sorry for disappearing. That she wished we had been kinder to each other. That I hadn't been as terrible as I thought. Sometimes I woke up crying. Then I'd see the marks. And the comfort would rot into fear. I tried to contact her. I made a new Instagram account because I was still blocked. I found her profile, but it was private. Her picture was old, from graduation. I sent a message that said, "This is Owen. I know this is weird, but are you okay?" No response. I messaged one of her friends from high school, a girl named Priya. She replied the next day. "Why are you asking?" I didn't want to sound insane, so I said I'd been having weird dreams and just wanted to check. Priya took almost an hour to respond. Then she wrote, "Lena came back from Portland a while ago. She's not really talking to people." My mouth went dry. "What do you mean came back?" "She dropped out, I think. She's living with her mom again." Her mom's apartment was 15 minutes from my house. I stared at that message until my screen dimmed. For the first time, the situation shifted in my mind. It wasn't just dreams and impossible marks. Lena was close. Close enough to drive past my house. Close enough to know if my dad's car was gone. Close enough to touch my door, if she could get inside. But how would she know what happened in my dreams? Unless the dreams weren't warnings. Unless they were my brain trying to explain things I was half hearing in my sleep. That thought scared me more than any supernatural explanation. Because a ghost can be doubted. A person can open a window. That evening, I drove to Lena's mom's apartment complex. I know that sounds stupid. It was stupid. But I was 19, exhausted, and desperate for something real. The complex was one of those brown two-story places with metal stairs outside and identical doors. I parked near the office and sat in my car for 20 minutes, trying to decide whether to knock. Then I saw Lena. She came out of the laundry room carrying a basket. At least, I thought it was her. She was thinner than I remembered. Her hair was shorter, cut just above her shoulders. She wore a big dark sweatshirt and moved like she didn't want anyone to notice her. I got out of the car. "Lena?" She stopped. For a second, she didn't turn around. Then she looked over her shoulder. It was her. But the expression on her face wasn't surprise. It was fear. Not fear of me. Fear for me. She walked quickly toward my car and hissed, "Why are you here? I need to talk to you." "No, you need to leave. I've been having dreams about you." Her face changed. The laundry basket slipped slightly in her arms. I said, "You keep apologizing. You keep coming to my door." She looked past me toward the parking lot. Then she said, so quietly I almost didn't hear her, "Did he touch the door?" My skin went cold. "What? Did he leave marks?" I couldn't speak. Lena's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. She just looked tired. Deeply, impossibly tired. "I tried to warn you," she said. A door opened on the second floor. Lena flinched. A man stepped out onto the walkway above us. He looked maybe late 30s, maybe older. It was hard to tell from below. He wore jeans and a dark jacket, and he leaned on the railing with both hands. "Just watching." Lena whispered, "Go." "Who is that?" "Go now." The man smiled down at us. It wasn't a big smile, just a small, polite one. The kind a neighbor gives you when you both reach the mailbox at the same time. That made it worse. I got back in my car because every instinct in my body told me to move. As I pulled out, I looked in the rearview mirror. Lena was still standing there with the laundry basket. The man was behind her now. Not touching her. Just close. That night, I didn't sleep at home. I went to Mason's apartment and told him enough of the truth that he let me crash on his floor without making jokes. I didn't mention dreams. I said there might be someone messing with my house, and I didn't feel safe. Mason was the kind of guy who acted like nothing scared him, but even he locked the deadbolt and put a chair under the doorknob after I told him. I fell asleep around 4 a.m. No dream. No Lena. No knocks. For the first time in weeks, I woke up feeling almost normal. Then I checked my phone. Dad had sent me a picture at 3:19 a.m. It was my bedroom door. There were handprints all over it. Not one, not two, dozens, purple and gray and smeared down the paint, overlapping each other like someone had been trapped inside my room and clawing to get out. Below the picture, Dad had written, "Come home now. Police are here." When I got there, 2 patrol cars were outside. Ronnie was on the porch. My dad looked older than I had ever seen him look. The officers found no one in the house. But they found something else. The crawl space access in the back of my closet had been opened from the inside. I had never even noticed that panel before. It was low, behind a stack of old shoes and a laundry hamper. The kind of thing you stop seeing, because it's always been there. The officer pulled it open and shined a flashlight inside. There were footprints in the dust. Not old ones. Fresh. Someone had been under the house. Someone had access to the walls. They found a little gap near the foundation outside, partly hidden by bushes. Big enough for a thin adult to crawl through if they really wanted to. The wood around it had been loosened and replaced carefully, so it wouldn't look broken. Inside the crawl space, near my bedroom wall, they found a phone. An old prepaid phone with a cracked screen and no service plan. It had been set to play audio files on a timer through a small Bluetooth speaker tucked behind the vent. The files were recordings. Lena's voice, saying my name, apologizing, whispering things. Some of them sounded edited, cut together from old voice messages she had probably sent someone. Some were new. Some were so distorted I couldn't tell. There were also pictures on the phone. Pictures of my house, my bedroom window from outside, my dad's car leaving the driveway at night, me asleep. That's the image that still lives in my head. Me asleep in my own bed, taken from inside my room. My blanket pulled up to my chest, my mouth slightly open, one arm hanging off the mattress. A stranger had stood over me while I slept and taken a picture. I remember sitting on the stairs with my hands between my knees while an officer talked to my dad in the kitchen. Their voices sounded far away, like I was underwater. My whole life had shrunk down to that one fact. Someone had been in my room. Someone had watched me sleep. The dreams hadn't been dreams, not fully. They were my brain building a nightmare around real sounds. Around whispers coming through the vent. Around someone moving behind the walls. But that didn't explain everything. It didn't explain the handprints. The officers tested them later. I don't know all the details, and honestly, I didn't want to. They said it was a mixture of makeup, paint pigment, and something like crushed charcoal. Not blood. Not anything supernatural. That should have made me feel better. It didn't. Because someone still had to press those handprints there. Someone still had to stand outside my door in the dark and know exactly where Lena had touched it in my dream. The police went to Lena's mom's apartment that afternoon. Lena wasn't there. Neither was the man from the railing. Her mom said the man's name was Darren. He was a friend of Lena's older cousin, apparently. He had been staying around the complex off and on, doing handyman work, fixing locks, helping people move furniture, little things like that. The kind of guy people let around because he seemed useful. Lena's mom thought he was harmless. People always think that until they can't anymore. They found Lena 2 days later at a bus station in Salem. She was alive. I need to say that clearly because for a while I didn't know if she was. She told police Darren had become obsessed with her after she moved back from Portland. At first, he was just around too much, offering rides, bringing groceries, saying he knew what it felt like to be lonely. Then he started showing up when she hadn't told anyone where she was. Then he started mentioning things from her phone, things he shouldn't have known. She tried to cut him off. That's when he started using me. Apparently he found old messages between us somehow. Maybe from a broken phone Lena had thrown in a drawer. Maybe from her cloud account. I never got a clear answer. He became fixated on the idea that I was the reason Lena wouldn't start over with him. He told her I needed to forgive her so she could move on. He made her record apologies. At first she refused. Then he threatened to come to my house. So she recorded them. She said she tried to warn me at the apartment complex, but Darren was watching. The part that still bothers me is what she said next. She told the detective she never recorded some of the things I heard. She never said, He follows when I talk. She never said, don't let him know you heard me. She never said, wake up. I know what you're thinking. Maybe I imagined those parts. Maybe my sleep-deprived brain filled in the gaps. Maybe stress turned whispers and speaker static into words. That's what I told myself too. But then there was the last night. The night everything ended. Darren disappeared after Lena was found. Police had his name, his description, and enough evidence to arrest him if they could locate him, but he was gone. His car wasn't at the apartment. His phone was off. Nobody knew where he had gone. My dad wanted us to stay at a motel. I said yes immediately. I didn't care about looking scared anymore. I was scared. We packed in a hurry. Just clothes, chargers, important papers, whatever fit into 2 bags. Ronnie came over and stood in the driveway while we loaded the car. The whole neighborhood looked normal around us. Porch lights glowing. A dog barking 2 streets over. Someone's TV flashing blue behind curtains. Normal can feel insulting when you're terrified. Dad went back inside to get his medication from the bathroom. I waited by the car, holding my backpack. Then I heard my phone buzz. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then it buzzed again. A text. I'm sorry. My blood went cold. Another text came through. I tried. I looked toward the house. The upstairs hallway light was on. Dad's shadow moved behind the bathroom window. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. For 2 seconds there was only breathing. Then Lena's voice whispered, Owen, don't let him leave with you. I couldn't move. From inside the house, Dad called, Owen, you seen my keys? The line went dead. I turned slowly toward the car. Dad's keys were on the driver's seat. They hadn't been there before. I had watched him put them in his jacket pocket. The back door of the car was unlocked. I took 1 step closer. The interior dome light had not come on. That meant one of the doors had been opened and then carefully pushed almost shut, not fully latched. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling as I reached for the door handle. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. I don't know why I did it. Maybe because some part of me already knew. I pulled the back door open. Darren was crouched on the floor behind the driver's seat. He looked up at me, not panicked, not surprised, just calm. He had those empty, steady eyes people get when they've already decided what they're going to do. For half a second, neither of us moved. Then he lunged. I fell backward so hard my shoulder hit the driveway. My phone flew out of my hand. Darren scrambled out of the car, and I screamed. Not a cool scream. Not even words. Just this broken sound that tore out of me before I could stop it. Ronnie heard it. So did my dad. Darren ran. He didn't try to attack me. He didn't say anything. He just bolted across our lawn toward the side of the house. Ronnie chased him for maybe 10 steps before yelling for Dad to stay with me and calling 911. Darren jumped the fence into the backyard. And then he was gone. Police found him 20 minutes later hiding in a shed 3 houses down. He had a backpack with gloves, duct tape, a folding knife, zip ties, and another prepaid phone. I don't like thinking about what would have happened if I had gotten into that car. If Dad had started driving. If Darren had waited until we were on some darker road, or at the motel parking lot, or until my dad stepped inside to check in. People ask me sometimes if I think he meant to kill us. I don't know. I don't need to know. The things in that backpack were enough. Afterward, everything became statements and court dates and people saying words like stalking, unlawful entry, harassment, and attempted kidnapping. Words that sound clean on paper, but feel filthy when they're attached to your life. Lena testified. I did too. Darren took a plea before trial. I'm not going to pretend the system gave anyone some perfect ending. It didn't. He went away for a while, but not forever. People like that don't disappear into a hole where they can never come back. They serve time. They get released. They move somewhere else. They become someone else's helpful neighbor. Lena moved out of state with her aunt. We spoke once after everything settled. It was a short call. She cried. I cried too, though I tried not to make noise. She said, I'm sorry. And for the first time, hearing those words didn't feel comforting. It made me feel cold. I told her it wasn't her fault. I meant it. Mostly. Fear makes forgiveness complicated. I knew she had been trapped in her own version of the nightmare, but some small ugly part of me still wished she had warned me sooner, louder, clearer. That's not fair. I know that. But true stories don't clean themselves up for you. My dad sold the house 6 months later. He said it was because the market was good, but I knew the real reason. Neither of us could sleep there anymore. Every creak in the walls sounded like someone shifting their weight under the floor. Every soft knock from the pipes made my throat tighten. I moved into an apartment near campus and bought 2 door cameras, window alarms, and a metal door brace. I still check closets when I come home. I still look in the back seat before getting into a car. I still sleep with a small lamp on, not because I think light stops anything, but because I can't stand waking up in total darkness. For a long time, I didn't dream about Lena. Then, about a year after Darren's arrest, I had one more dream. I was back in my old bedroom. The room was empty. No bed. No desk. Just clean carpet and white walls where posters used to be. The door was closed. A line of hallway light glowed beneath it. I stood in the middle of the room, already knowing I was asleep. 2 soft taps came from the other side. I didn't say anything. Then Lena's voice whispered, "I'm sorry." I felt that old fear crawl up my spine. But this time, I walked to the door. I don't know why. Maybe because I was older. Maybe because I was tired of being afraid of a piece of wood. Maybe because some part of me needed to know what waited on the other side. I put my hand on the knob. From the hallway, Lena said, "Don't open it." I stopped. "Why?" There was a long silence. Then she said, "Because this one isn't me." I woke up in my apartment with my lamp still on, and my heart pounding so hard my chest hurt. For a while I just listened. No footsteps. No whispers. No knocks. Eventually, I got up and checked the door. There were no handprints. No marks. Nothing. Just my apartment door, locked and plain and ordinary. I stood there for a long time anyway, because that's what fear does. It teaches your body lessons your mind can't unlearn. Sometimes people ask what the scariest part was. They expect me to say it was finding the pictures of myself asleep, or seeing Darren crouched in the back of the car, or waking up in the hallway with no memory of getting there. Those were horrible, but they weren't the worst part. The worst part was the comfort. The way fear came wearing a familiar voice. The way something dangerous used an apology to get close. The way I wanted, even for a second, to open that door. So if your gut tells you something is wrong, listen to it. Even if it sounds like someone you miss. Especially then. Story 5. Have you ever found something in your house that you knew, with absolute certainty, should not have been there? Not like losing your keys and finding them in the fridge because you were tired. Not like a sock turning up behind the dryer. I mean something you threw away. Something you watched disappear. Something that came back anyway. For me, it was a pillowcase. That sounds stupid when I say it out loud. Almost embarrassing. A pillowcase is not supposed to be scary. It is one of those soft, boring objects you don't think about unless it's missing from the laundry basket. But this one had belonged to my ex. And the morning I found it back on my pillow, still warm, smelling like his cologne, folded into the shape of a face, I remember standing in my bedroom doorway with my coffee in my hand, feeling like the air had been sucked out of the apartment. Because I lived alone. Because my door had been locked. Because I had thrown it away the night before. My name is Lena. I was 26 when this happened, and at the time I lived in a small apartment in a suburb outside Portland, Oregon. Not the nice glossy part people put on postcards, but not a bad place either. Just one of those quiet neighborhoods with wet sidewalks, old trees, and apartment buildings that all look like they were built in the same tired decade. I worked at a dental office as a receptionist. It was not exciting, but it was steady. I opened the front desk at 7:30 most mornings, answered phones, checked insurance, smiled at people who didn't want to be there, and went home smelling faintly like mint, latex gloves, and coffee that had been reheated too many times. My life was normal. Painfully normal, honestly. I had a routine. I got groceries every Sunday. I called my mom on Wednesdays. I watched the same cooking videos while eating pasta straight from the pot. I did laundry in the basement of my building because the machines in the units were always coming soon, according to the landlord, which had been true for 4 years. My apartment was on the second floor, unit 214. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, thin beige carpet, a little balcony that faced the parking lot, and a front door that opened to an indoor hallway. It was not beautiful, but it was mine. And after Marcus, mine was exactly what I needed. Marcus was my ex-boyfriend. We had dated for almost 2 years, and for the first year, I thought he was just intense in a flattering way. He remembered tiny details. He noticed when I changed my shampoo. He would text me if I took a different route home from work, saying things like, "Traffic bad," as if he had just guessed. At first I thought it was sweet. Later, it felt like being watched through glass. He was not the kind of guy who screamed in public or broke things in front of people. That would have been easier to explain. Marcus was calm. Too calm. He had this soft voice that made other people think he was reasonable, even when he was saying something insane. If I went out with coworkers, he would ask, "Why didn't you invite me?" If I wanted a night to myself, he would say, "You're pulling away." If I didn't answer a text for 20 minutes, he would send another one that just said, "I know you saw it." The breakup was messy, but not dramatic in the way people imagine. No plates thrown. No police. Just me crying in my car outside a grocery store because I realized I had started lying about simple things to avoid his questions. I told him I was done in March. By July, I had changed my locks, blocked his number, blocked his email, blocked him on everything I could think of, and started sleeping with a chair angled under my bedroom door like I was in some cheap motel. That part eventually faded. You get tired of being afraid. Your body can only stay on high alert for so long before it starts pretending things are fine. By autumn, I had mostly convinced myself he had moved on. Then one rainy Thursday night in October, I cleaned out my closet. I remember that night clearly because it was one of those small, harmless evenings that only become important later. I came home from work around 6, kicked off my flats, microwaved leftover soup, and decided I was sick of looking at the storage bins stacked in the corner of my bedroom. I put on music. I opened a trash bag. I started pulling out old sweaters, broken hangers, empty shoe boxes, things I had moved from one apartment to another for no real reason. Near the back of the closet, behind a plastic bin of winter scarves, I found a folded white pillowcase. It took me a second to understand why it made my stomach tighten. It had a small gray stripe along the opening. Marcus had a set just like it. Not expensive, not special, just white cotton with that gray seam. He always used one pillowcase until it smelled strongly like his cologne, then acted annoyed when I washed it. I picked it up between 2 fingers. It still had the faint smell. Cedar, smoke, and something sharp underneath. His cologne. I actually laughed when I found it. Not because it was funny, but because I was annoyed at myself for feeling anything at all. It was just a pillowcase. It had probably gotten mixed in with my stuff when I moved out of his place months earlier. Maybe it had been sitting there the whole time. Still, I didn't want it in my apartment. I carried it straight to the kitchen, dropped it into the trash, then paused. That felt too easy. So I took the trash bag out of the can, tied it tight, put on my hoodie, and carried it downstairs to the dumpsters behind the building. The rain was soft but steady. The parking lot lights made everything look yellow. I remember the smell of wet leaves and garbage. I lifted the dumpster lid, threw the bag in, and heard it land with a heavy plastic thud. Then I went back upstairs, locked my door, and slept better than I had in weeks. Until the next morning. I woke up at 6:15 to the sound of my alarm and the gray light of rain pressing against my blinds. I showered, brushed my teeth, got dressed, and made coffee. I was halfway through pouring creamer when I realized I had left my phone charger in the bedroom. I walked back in. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Marcus's cologne. Not faint. Not old. Fresh, like someone had sprayed it in the room minutes earlier. I stopped in the doorway. My bed was made. I had not made it. I never made my bed before work. I was always rushing. The comforter was pulled smooth, the pillows stacked neatly. And on top of my pillow was the white pillowcase. Folded. Not just folded flat. It had been twisted and tucked so that the gray stripe made a crooked mouth. 2 little dents had been pressed into the fabric above it, like eyes. The whole thing looked like a face that had collapsed in on itself. I just stood there. My toffee milch was warm in my hand. My bedroom was silent except for the heater ticking in the wall. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe I had dreamed throwing it away. Maybe I had thrown away a different bag. Maybe I had found 2 pillowcases and forgotten one. The mind does weird things when you're tired. But then I touched it. It was warm. Not room temperature. Warm, like it had been under someone's head. My fingers snapped away so fast I almost dropped the mug. I grabbed the pillowcase with a towel from the bathroom, shoved it into a grocery bag, and took it down to the dumpster again. This time, I didn't just throw it in. I opened the lid and looked. My trash bag from the night before was still there. I could see the yellow drawstring I used. It had been torn open. There were coffee grounds, soup containers, paper towels, and old closet junk spilling out of it. But the pillowcase was gone. I remember backing away from the dumpster slowly, looking around the parking lot like I expected someone to step out from between the cars. Nobody did. A woman from 108 was walking her little dog near the grass. A delivery truck idled by the mailboxes. Somewhere above me, someone opened a window and coughed. Everything looked normal. The street looked ordinary, quiet, even comforting, but my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late that danger often wears a friendly face. I was late to work that morning. I barely spoke to anyone. My coworker Denise asked if I was sick because I kept rubbing my hands on my pants. At lunch, I told her what happened. Not all of it at first. I just said, "This is going to sound weird, but I think someone may have gone through my trash." Denise was in her 40s, practical, kind, and very good at making things feel less dramatic than they were. She asked if anything was missing. I told her about the pillowcase. Her expression changed a little when I said Marcus's name. She knew enough. Not everything, but enough. "You should tell your landlord," she said. "Ask if they have cameras." I did that as soon as I got home. My landlord, Greg, was the kind of man who always seemed irritated that tenants needed things. He had an office by the laundry room and wore the same brown zip-up sweater almost every time I saw him. When I told him someone might have gone through the dumpsters, he shrugged. "People do that," he said. "Bottle collectors, sometimes homeless folks." In the locked building parking lot. He looked at me over his glasses. "The parking lot isn't locked." I asked about cameras. He said the cameras by the front entrance worked, but the ones facing the dumpsters had been down for a while. Of course they had. I told him I was worried someone might have gotten into my apartment. That got his attention, but not in a helpful way. "Any signs of forced entry?" "No." "Door damaged?" "No." "Windows?" "I'm on the 2nd floor." "Then it's unlikely." He said that word like it was supposed to comfort me. Unlikely. A lot of terrible things are unlikely until they happen in your bedroom. That night, I checked every window lock twice. I put a chair under my bedroom doorknob again. I turned on every light in the apartment. I slept with a kitchen knife on my nightstand, which now feels ridiculous and unsafe, but at the time it made me feel like I had some control. Nothing happened. The next day, nothing happened either. By Sunday, I started to calm down. That's how fear works sometimes. You can't carry the full weight of it forever. After 48 hours with no new incident, your brain starts bargaining. Maybe I overreacted. Maybe it was a bad coincidence. Maybe I had more of Marcus's old things than I realized. On Sunday afternoon, I did laundry. The laundry room was in the basement, down a narrow stairwell that always smelled like detergent, damp concrete, and someone's old cigarettes. There were 4 washers and 4 dryers, but only 2 of each worked consistently. People in the building treated laundry like a battlefield. I put my clothes in washer 3, set a timer on my phone, and went back upstairs. 35 minutes later, I came down to switch everything to the dryer. The washer lid was open. My clothes were still inside, wet and twisted, but something was sitting on top of them. A white pillowcase with a gray stripe. For a second, I honestly thought my mind had broken. I stared at it from across the room, one hand still on the laundry basket. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Somewhere in the pipes, water knocked and groaned. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. The footsteps were above me, moving across the floor near the basement door. Slow. Then they stopped. I grabbed my laundry without the pillowcase, shoving wet clothes into the basket so fast water dripped onto my shoes. I left the pillowcase in the washer. I didn't care. I ran upstairs, took the steps 2 at a time, and nearly slammed into Mr. Alvarado from 203 coming through the door with a trash bag. "You okay?" he asked. I said yes, which was a lie, and rushed past him. Back in my apartment, I locked the door and called Denise. She told me to call the police non-emergency line. So I did. The officer who came out was young and polite. His name was Officer Randall. He stood in my living room with a little notebook while I explained the pillowcase, Marcus, the trash, the laundry room. I could hear how it sounded as I said it. A pillowcase came back. A pillowcase was warm. A pillowcase was folded like a face. He didn't laugh, but his face stayed neutral in that official way people use when they don't want to make a promise. "Has your ex contacted you directly?" he asked. "No." "Threatened you?" "Not recently." "Do you have proof he was here?" "No." He wrote something down. I asked if they could talk to him. He said they could make a note of it, but without evidence of a crime, there wasn't much they could do. He advised me to document everything, take photos, keep screenshots, and call immediately if I saw Marcus or if anyone tried to enter my apartment. "Trust your instincts," he said at the door. It was the kindest useless thing anyone could have said. That night, I did not sleep. I sat on my couch with all the lights on, watching the gap under the front door like something might slide through. Around 2 in the morning, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. The text said, "You always hated doing laundry alone." I stopped breathing. I stared at those words until the screen dimmed. Then another message came through. "You left something downstairs." I called 911 this time. By the time officers arrived, whoever had sent the text was gone. They checked the hallway, the stairwell, the laundry room, the parking lot. Nothing. The pillowcase was still in the washer, soaked and bunched up, like any piece of laundry someone forgot. They took a report. They told me to block the number. I did. The next morning, I called in sick to work. Then I called a locksmith. He arrived around noon, a man named Terry with gray hair and a tool bag. He replaced the deadbolt, added a chain lock, and installed a little door reinforcement plate. While he worked, he made small talk about the rain, the building, how these old apartment doors were basically cardboard with hinges. That did not make me feel better. When he finished, he handed me the new keys and said, "You'll sleep better tonight." I thanked him. I did not sleep better. For 3 days, nothing happened. No texts. No pillowcase. No smell of cologne. I went to work, came home, locked myself inside, and moved through my apartment like it no longer belonged to me. I started noticing things I had never noticed before. The way the hallway light flickered outside my door. The tiny scratch marks near the lock. The sound of footsteps overhead and how hard it was to tell whether they were above me, beside me, or right outside. Every normal apartment sound became a question. Was that the pipes? Was that my neighbor? Was that someone breathing? On the 4th day, I found the photo. It was tucked under my windshield wiper when I left for work. At first I thought it was a flyer. Something for a pizza place or a local car wash. I almost tossed it into the passenger seat without looking. Then I saw myself in the picture. It was a printed photo, not great quality, like it had come from a cheap printer. It showed me standing on my balcony in pajama pants and a sweatshirt, holding a mug with both hands. I remembered that morning. It had been Monday. I had stepped outside for maybe 2 minutes because the apartment felt stuffy. I had not seen anyone. On the back of the photo, written in black pen, were 4 words. "You still look tired." I drove straight to the police station. This time, they took it more seriously. A different officer, a woman named Harris, asked me questions in a small room that smelled like old coffee. Did Marcus own a camera? Did he know where I lived? Had he ever had access to my keys? Did he have friends in my building? Did I know what car he was driving now? Yes, he knew where I lived. He had helped me move into the apartment when we were still together. Yes, he had once had a key, but I had changed the locks after we broke up. No, I didn't know if he had friends in the building. He used to drive a dark blue Honda Civic, but he could have changed cars. Officer Harris asked if I had considered staying somewhere else. That question scared me more than anything else she said, because up until then, part of me had still been waiting for some adult, some authority figure, to tell me I was safe. Instead, she was telling me to leave. I stayed with Denise that night. She lived 20 minutes away in a townhouse with her husband and 2 kids. She made up the couch for me and tried to keep things normal. Her daughter showed me a drawing of a cat wearing sunglasses. Her husband checked my car doors before bed. I remember lying there under a floral blanket, listening to their refrigerator hum, feeling both grateful and humiliated. I was 26 years old and afraid of a pillowcase. The next morning, Denise drove me to my apartment so I could get more clothes. Her husband, Mark, insisted on coming too. Just in case, he said. The hallway was empty when we arrived. My door looked normal. The new lock was untouched. Mark went in first, then Denise, then me. Nothing seemed wrong. No smell, no open drawers, no weird objects on the bed. I packed quickly. Jeans, work shirts, underwear, chargers, makeup, my birth certificate, some cash I kept in a mug in the cabinet. I felt stupid taking documents like I was fleeing a fire, but I took them anyway. As I zipped my overnight bag, Denise called from the kitchen. Lena? Her voice had changed. I went out. She was standing by the fridge, staring at the little magnetic notepad I used for grocery lists. The top sheet had writing on it. Not mine. Not Denise's. Just one sentence, written in small, neat letters. You can't sleep at her house forever. For a few seconds, none of us moved. Then Mark said very quietly, "Get out." We left the apartment and called the police from the parking lot. My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. That was how it felt, even though Denise and Mark were standing right next to me. Like the apartment had swallowed something of me, and whoever had been inside knew it. The police came again. They searched the apartment. They checked the balcony door, the windows, the closets, under the bed. They did not find anyone. But they did find something. The attic hatch. I didn't even know there was one. In the hallway outside my unit, near the ceiling between my door and the stairwell, there was a square panel painted the same beige as the walls. I had walked under it hundreds of times without noticing. It led to a narrow maintenance crawl space above the second-floor units. The officers found dust disturbed around the edge. Greg, the landlord, looked pale when they asked for access. He claimed only maintenance had keys to those spaces. He claimed the hatch was always locked. It wasn't. Inside the crawl space, above my apartment, they found a small duffel bag. Inside the bag were a flashlight, gloves, a screwdriver, a half-empty bottle of Marcus's cologne, several printed photos of me, and one of my missing kitchen knives wrapped in a dish towel. I want to be careful with this part because people always ask the same question. Was Marcus living in the ceiling? No, not exactly. At least, that's what the police said later. The crawl space was too narrow and exposed to stay in for long. But someone had been using it to access the ceiling panels above several units. There was an opening above my bedroom closet where a vent cover had been loosened. From there, someone could see a small slice of my room. Not the whole room, just enough. Enough to know when I was home. Enough to know when I slept. Enough to know when I left. I felt sick when they told me. There is a specific kind of fear that comes from realizing your privacy was an illusion. Not broken suddenly, but slowly over time. Like someone had been standing just outside the circle of your life, close enough to breathe on the glass. The police put out a request to speak with Marcus. They went to his last known address. He was not there. His roommate said Marcus had moved out 2 weeks earlier and had been acting weird. That was the exact phrase. Acting weird. Like he had not already crossed every line a person could cross. His phone was disconnected. His social media accounts were gone. His workplace said he had quit. For a little while, everyone acted like maybe the worst was over because now we had proof. But proof does not lock doors. Proof does not make you sleep. I moved out of my apartment the next week. Technically, I broke my lease, but after the police report and the crawl space, Greg didn't fight me. He actually avoided looking at me when I came back with my brother and 2 of his friends to pack everything. I threw away my mattress, my pillows, my sheets, most of my closet, especially anything white. That probably sounds excessive, but if you had seen that pillowcase on my bed, warm and shaped like a face, you would understand. For about a month, I lived with my mom. She lived in Salem in a little blue house with wind chimes on the porch and too many lamps in every room. I should have felt safe there. In some ways I did. But I had changed. I checked windows constantly. I flinched when unknown cars slowed down outside. I slept in the guest room with the door locked and a chair under the knob. My mom tried to be patient, but I could tell it scared her too. Not just what happened, but what it had done to me. "You're safe here," she would say. I wanted to believe her. Then, one night in November, I woke up to the sound of my phone vibrating on the nightstand. It was 3:12 a.m. Unknown number. I did not open the message at first. I just stared at the screen in the dark, my mouth dry, already knowing. Finally, I tapped it. The message said, "Your mom snores." I screamed. Not a movie scream. Not clean or dramatic. It came out broken and ugly, and my mom was in the room within seconds, terrified, holding a baseball bat she kept by her bed because she watched too much local news. We called 911. Officers came and searched the yard. They found shoe prints in the wet grass outside the guest room window. They also found a cigarette, but near the fence. Marcus smoked the same brand, but so did half the people in Oregon, according to one of the officers. My mom installed cameras the next day. For a week, nothing happened. Then the camera caught him. At 2:47 a.m. on a Saturday, a man in a dark hoodie walked up the sidewalk toward my mom's house. He kept his head down, but there was enough light from the porch to see part of his face when he turned. It was Marcus. He stood near the front window for almost 3 minutes. He did not knock. He did not try the door. He just stood there with his hands in his pockets, facing the house, like he was waiting for someone inside to invite him in. Then he placed something on the porch and walked away. The police came before sunrise. The object on the porch was a white pillowcase. Not folded this time. Inside it was a key. My old apartment key. The one I thought he no longer had. Attached to it with a piece of tape was a note. I still have others. After that, everything moved faster, but not fast enough. The police issued a warrant. Marcus was officially wanted for stalking, burglary, harassment, and a few other charges I don't remember clearly because by then my brain was fog. They told me not to go anywhere alone. They told my mom to keep doors locked. They increased patrols around the house for a few days. A detective named Lowell took over the case. He was older, calm, and blunt. I appreciated that. He didn't tell me not to worry. He didn't say Marcus was just trying to scare me. He said, "This kind of behavior can escalate when the person feels control slipping." Control. That was the word that made everything click. It had never really been love with Marcus. It had been ownership dressed up as love. The pillowcase was not random. It was intimate, familiar, something from a bed, from sleep, from the part of life where you are most defenseless. He wanted me to know he could reach that part of me. He wanted me to know there was no private place. The confrontation happened 4 nights later. I was still at my mom's house. She had gone to bed early because stress had worn her down. I was awake in the guest room, sitting against the headboard with a blanket over my legs, watching cooking videos with the sound low. I wasn't really watching. I just needed a voice in the room. Around 1:30 a.m., I heard a soft tap. Not at the window. At the wall. I muted the phone. The house went still. Then came another tap. 3 little knocks, spaced evenly. Tap, tap, tap. I thought maybe it was the pipes. The house was old. It made noises. Then my phone lit up. Unknown number. The message said, "Wrong wall." I didn't move. A second later, there was a sound from the hallway outside the guest room. A creak. Very slow, like someone shifting weight on the floorboards. I remember every small detail of that moment. The blue light from my phone on the blanket. The taste of metal in my mouth. The way my fingers went numb around the phone. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. The guest room door was locked. The chair was under the knob. But suddenly both of those things felt childish, temporary, like holding a paper umbrella in a storm. I called 911 without speaking. I just pressed the emergency call and held the phone under the blanket. The operator answered. I whispered, "Someone is in my house." The floor creaked again. Closer. The doorknob turned. Once. Slowly. Then stopped. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling as I fumbled for the keys. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. I don't know why my mind went to keys. I think I was thinking of the window. The guest room had a small side window that opened over the backyard. There was a screen, and outside was a drop of maybe 4 feet into wet grass. The operator was asking questions. I was barely answering. The doorknob turned again. This time, pressure came against the door. The chair legs scraped softly on the wood floor. I slid off the bed as quietly as I could and moved toward the window. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock it. The metal latch made a tiny click that sounded impossibly loud. The pressure against the door stopped. For 1 second, there was silence. Then Marcus spoke from the hallway. "Lena." Just my name. Soft. Almost disappointed. Something in me broke loose. I shoved the window open, pushed at the screen, and it stuck. Of course it stuck. Everything in moments like that sticks. I pressed harder. The frame bent, but didn't pop out. Behind me, the chair scraped again, louder. The door opened maybe an inch before the chain of the chair caught under the knob. I heard Marcus exhale. Not angry. Amused. "Don't do that," he said. I slammed my shoulder into the screen. It popped free and fell into the bushes outside. I climbed through the window head first like an idiot, scraping my arm on the frame, landing hard on my hands and knees in the wet grass. Pain shot through my wrist. I didn't stop. Behind me, the bedroom door hit the wall. I ran. I ran barefoot across my mother's backyard, through mud and dead leaves, toward the side gate. The latch caught. My hands slipped. I looked back once. Marcus was at the guest room window. He wasn't climbing out. He was just standing there, framed in the dark rectangle of the room, watching me with those calm, empty eyes. Even after escaping, even with the safety of the police lights behind me, a small, cold part of me couldn't stop replaying the face I'd seen through the window. The calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. I got the gate open and ran into the street screaming for help. A neighbor's porch light came on. Then another. A dog started barking like crazy. I heard my mom screaming from inside the house. I heard sirens in the distance, getting closer. Marcus disappeared from the window before the police arrived. They found the back door unlocked. My mom swore she had locked it. Later, they found pry marks near the laundry room window. He had gotten in through the back, using a tool to force the latch without breaking the glass. Quiet, careful, practiced. He had been inside the house for at least 20 minutes before I heard him. That part still keeps me awake sometimes. Not the chase. The 20 minutes. What was he doing during that time? Standing in the hallway? Looking into my mom's room? Watching me through the guest room door crack before he knocked on the wall? Police searched the neighborhood until dawn. They didn't find him that night. They found him 2 days later in a motel outside Eugene, after a clerk recognized him from a local news post. He had paid cash, used a fake name, and parked behind the building. When they arrested him, he did not fight. That was what Detective Lowell told me. Marcus opened the door before they even knocked twice. He had a duffel bag packed on the bed. Inside the room, they found more photos. Some of me at work, some of my car, some of my mom's house. One photo showed Denise's townhouse from across the street. They also found several pillowcases. Different ones. Some were mine. I don't know how he got them all. I don't want to know. There were keys too. Not just my old apartment key. Copies of keys I recognized and some I didn't. The detective said Marcus had likely made duplicates during the relationship whenever he had access to my keychain. That was one of the hardest things to accept. He had prepared long before I knew I needed to be afraid. Marcus eventually took a plea deal. I won't go into every legal detail because, honestly, part of it still makes me angry. The sentence did not feel like enough. People imagine that once someone is caught, the story ends. It doesn't. There are court dates, statements, paperwork, notifications, protective orders, phone calls from numbers you don't recognize that make you feel like you're falling through the floor all over again. I moved again after that. Not back to Portland. I couldn't. I rented a small place closer to my brother, in a different town, under a different leasing company, with cameras, better locks, and neighbors who knew enough to call me if they saw anything weird. For a long time, I slept on my couch. I couldn't sleep in a bedroom. Bedrooms felt too closed in, too easy to watch. I stopped using scented laundry detergent. I threw away every pillowcase I owned and bought new ones in dark colors. Gray, navy green. Never white. I know that sounds irrational. Maybe it is. But fear doesn't care what makes sense. It builds little rules inside you. Don't sleep with the blinds open. Don't leave laundry unattended. Don't let anyone hold your keys. Don't ignore the car parked too long outside. Don't tell yourself you're overreacting just because the thing you're afraid of sounds small. People think danger always announces itself. A scream, a broken window, a stranger with a weapon. Sometimes it's softer than that. Sometimes it smells like someone you used to love. Sometimes it comes folded on your pillow in the shape of a face. It has been 3 years now. Marcus is not in my life anymore. There is a protective order. There are alerts. There are people who know what to do if he tries to contact me. Most days I'm okay. I go to work. I laugh with people. I buy groceries. I take walks when the weather is nice. I have a normal life again, at least from the outside. But some nights, especially when it rains, I still wake up convinced I smell cedar and smoke. I'll lie there in the dark, perfectly still, listening. The apartment will be quiet. The door will be locked. The cameras will be on. Everything will be fine. And still I'll turn on the lamp. Still I'll check the closet. Still I'll touch my pillow to make sure it's cold. Sometimes the scariest part isn't what happened. It's knowing how ordinary everything looked right before it started. It's knowing how many chances I had to dismiss my own fear. It's knowing that people like Marcus don't need a reason. They just need access. So if something feels wrong in your home, even if it sounds ridiculous when you explain it, listen to that feeling. A strange smell. A moved object. A door you know you locked. A piece of fabric that should be at the bottom of a dumpster, but somehow ends up warm on your bed. Your gut may notice the truth before your mind is ready to accept it. And sometimes that tiny warning is the only thing standing between you and the person waiting quietly on the other side of the wall.